Alcorn, Nebraska. I'll figure out from Kozad. Kozad is where you filled up your car.
Really?
You got to Omaha,
Oh boy.
and Boulder was out there.
Exactly.
So you strategically try to figure out where to fill up the car. Kozad, Nebraska. Good morning, Alcorn, Nebraska, Juniper Row. Are you competing out there with fancy private equity, private credit people in New York City buying thousands and thousands of homes?
No, we're in a different business.
Right, that looks just like what they're buying. I need a different business.
We are developing communities, whether it's a multifamily community or a single family rental housing community. A lot of the companies that have gotten press for buying up houses, they're buying up scattered site housing. That's not our business. When people want to rent a single family house in a community, they are renting amenities that come with that. The pool, the gym, all of the other amenities that you would get in a multifamily community, a well-built, modern multifamily community. They're getting them even though they've got 4 walls and a yard. So that's what that is the business that we're in. We're not really competing against the scattered site. And I don't think scattered site is a continuing business model. It's just too costly to keep maintaining houses all over the place with different appliances and different things.
I gotta admit, I wonder about that.
Oh yeah, no, you can make a run at it. It's just not a very lucrative business because of the cost. It's much better to build something that you can maintain more easily and with less cost. And then you pass that along to the renter.
So I have a live stream going on Rumble. I have the dashboard on YouTube that's streaming now. I'm going to be setting up the streams on my website. And I've opened up X Spaces for the ones that would like to do a call in through X Spaces.
Rents under $2,000 a month?
Yeah.
What is that like?
Okay, there are a lot of places where it's a lot less than that.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, there are places where you can get a perfectly good apartment for $1,200, $1,300 a month. The difference is they've got the housing stock that was probably built a long time. Most of it was built a long time ago, and people aren't moving in. Even in Nebraska, yeah, they're moving into a place like Omaha, or in Iowa, they're moving into a place like Des Moines, but they're also moving out to a place like Charlotte. And so in a place like Charlotte, that's where the builders are simply trying to keep up with the number of people who are moving into the market. And the other thing that's going on is people are deciding between buying a house and renting. Even if they want to rent 4 walls and a room, generally speaking, right, they get wealthier by renting than by buying.
We're going to start the show. We're just, I don't want to talk to anybody else with Brad Case right now. Is the home ownership mathematics destroyed in America?
Yeah, it never has been a very good trade-off in terms of expectations. Some people get lucky. You buy a house, it turns out to be a great time or a great place to buy a house. But in terms of can you expect to build wealth? Well, the better way to build wealth is to put money in the stock market. And if you buy a house, you have to take 20% of the value of that house out of the stock market and put it into an asset that doesn't appreciate.
Can you come over to dinner and explain this to my family?
I would love it.
Okay, great.
All right, so I have the stream on YouTube going good. X Spaces is going good. I want to go to the skating club. It looks like 6 skaters were killed in the plane crash.
It strikes me as life. It's senseless, but accidents happen. I think for me personally, I'd rather have something like this happen in an accident than a terrorist activity or something, where somebody was deliberately trying to cause harm. It somehow makes it easier to accept that it was an accident. Well, I don't think we're ever going to forget them. That is certain. How we commemorate them here, we haven't gotten to that point to discuss, but we certainly will. Just definitely very important and well-loved members of our community.
I'm going to remind us you process the immediate information about the crash.
what went through my mind? It was the biggest thing was how can we get accurate information? At one point, we thought we had 12 skaters that were on, 12 skaters and their families. Then it was 8 to 10. And now, I mean, it sounds crazy to be relieved. Oh my gosh, it's only 6. But in some ways, I am relieved it's only 6. But it's a devastating 6.
I was wondering if you could, I know we spent.
There's another sense of that 6 that I was saying for the ones that just joined. I have the concept, the working hypothesis, all right, that seems to have a lot of historical proof to this for centuries, that random events have information in it. Information is surrounded in things, in events. Our mind seems to dull it down, but certain people can focus and get a piece of this information. Some people call it the Akashic record, some people call it the matrix, some people, you know, would say that it's some sort of Kabbalistic technique or gematria or numerology or whatever, but there's information. So when certain events happen, the way they happen can hint at future events. So a random event has information in it. So this random event of a plane crash with a military helicopter hitting it because they changed their operations during the day. Proof is that some people were saying during the morning and afternoon, planes were diverting their normal flight pattern when they were coming in to land that they never saw before. So it's assumed that it was because of the change in the pattern of the helicopters. And there were 3 people on the helicopter, so that means it was a training exercise because you need a pilot, a co-pilot, and an advisor. All right, so it seemed like there was a training exercise that changed. Something changed. Now what? I don't know. Maybe the military will never say. I don't know. But it was an accident. But there's information in this. So I'm saying that there were 60 passengers. There were 4 crewmen in the American airline flight 5342. There were 3 military crewmen in the helicopter, and there were 6 skaters. And I'm saying that since the assassination attempts with Trump, that I was sensing that there was a 9/11 event that is starting to build up. Why? Because the national security state needs money, needs war. And they don't want to be told that their budgets are going to be cut, that their organizations are going to be restructured. So if you orchestrate something, which this is not, but if you orchestrate something, then what will happen is that Congress will give more power to the national security state, just like what happened right after 9/11. And this thing is building up. I can't tell you the year. I sense that this will happen before the midterm election. So that means 2025 or 2026. That's just the sense that I have. I can't prove it. But when you look at this event, the numbers that pop up are 6 out of the 60 or 6 out of the skaters that were on the plane. The 3 members of the military, that's 9. When you add those 2 up, the sense of a disproportionate of casualty between the military versus civilian, 64 to 3. So there's a disproportionate that the effect of the military projects and affects the general population in a much higher multiple. And then you have the difference between the first 2 digits of the flight number and the last 2 digits, 5342. You subtract those, 53 minus 42, what do you get? 11. 11 with the 9, that's 9/11. Now maybe it's November 9th, but I sense a 9/11 thing happening. And I've been sensing this since July of last year. Okay, so I can't tell you what the year is. I can't even tell you the exact date, but I'm saying something like a 9/11 is coming. So how do you, so when you look at the date that this plane crashed, which was yesterday, that's January 29th. Well, if you play around with the digits, are we looking at 9/12? Are we looking at 9/21? Are we looking between 9/12 to 9/21? Or is a danger zone? What year? We don't know. I suspect that this all has to happen before the midterm elections. So it has to happen sometime in 2025 or 2026. But here again is 6 that keeps on popping up. And it's hinting something, it's hinting to us that there's information in this random event of a future calamity that the military is going to be a part of, that's going to affect the population. And it's in a magnitude of 20. So how do you get 20? Well, what is 60 divided by 3? Or you can even go, well, why aren't you including the crew members? Good point, but I'm just rounding it. That's a 20 multiple. There's information in that random event. Now, what the hell is it? Now, I have my take on it. Now, someone might see something different, and maybe you'd be correct. Maybe I'm wrong of the interpretation of the information, but there's information there for sure.
And 4 crew members on board the jet and 3 soldiers on board the Army UH-60 helicopter. At this point, the fire chief does say that 28 bodies have been recovered, one of those from the helicopter and the others from on board the jet there. We heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth as he posted a 2-minute statement on his social media moments ago. If you want to pop up the audio here and listen in.
But I also wanted to give an update on the tragedy that happened last night here in Washington, D.C. and provide a little bit more information as we are actively.
I need to pause this, even though this is live. So I paused it, and then and then we'll be behind the live stream. 64 plus 3. This is another important number that's starting to pop in my head here. Okay, 64 plus 3 is 67. What's 67? It's 13. There's 13, the number 13 in there. You want to hear something really weird? On my X Spaces was a picture that I posted of a scene that was in Save It Private Ryan, and it's the main character, right? The captain, I guess he is. The main character, I forgot his name. And he's lifting everybody up and putting them in the plane. And he's the last one to enter the plane before they take off to be parachuted into France when they do D-Day, okay? The plan was they were going to parachute in, and then there was going to be a land invasion. Then things got foobarred and everything, went to hell during D-Day. But in that scene, he's getting into, what the plane is? 67. 67. There's 67 people that were affected by this. This is what I mean, that people get sensitive and they get a hint of something that happens days before, but they don't know. We're not smart enough to understand it, to be able to inform the public with enough fidelity, with enough accuracy, with enough information to be able to stop an event. You got a military guy that's going into a plane. The plane shot down in the movie, and it's 67. Now, if you don't believe me, go to my X feed and look at the post.
To investigate and understand what occurred and why. At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the military district of Washington, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, the Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all key have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved.
All right, on my X feed, one of the best movies I think ever made was Saving Private Ryan. That's, you know, so that's in the top 10 of my favorite. So, so I posted this at 10:36 p.m. on January 18th. And I said, Godspeed. And the captain, the main character of the movie, is getting into plane 67. Now, I don't know what these bombers are, these bombers that they were jumping out of. You know, some, I don't know, B-27, B-21, I don't know. Maybe that there's some information in there. The point I'm making is it's a military guy getting into a plane that's 67. And I posted this on 10:36, January 18th. So there's some information that I was picking up. But I didn't know exactly what it meant. I was thinking that it was more about, you know, that America's back and that, you know, we need to be, you know, we need to not be fearful and move, you know, forward into the future. That was the intent of the post. But there's information here. I know this sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but something is going on here that we're being told.
Experienced crew, and it was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles. The 12th Aviation Battalion, as of now, is granted a 48-hour operational pause on contingency missions as what happened is reviewed, and a senior level aviation team, an investigative team from our Aviation Safety Center, was deployed last night and already is in Washington, D.C. to investigate what's going on. We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing. It's a tragedy.
All right, so if you take January 18th, which was my post on X with the 67 with the plane, and you subtract January 29th, what do you get? 11. Here again, we got a 6 that keeps on popping up, 11 that keeps on popping up. January 18th minus January 29th. It's 11. 53 minus 42, 11.
The loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner, and of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk. They're in our prayers.
You know, and again, this event is an accident. But again, you got to keep on understanding that events around us have information that's supposed to hint to us. People's souls recycle. They have to do a process, a cleansing process or whatever. And so information's not lost. You know, this is kind of like thermodynamic type stuff. All right. So their death, that event is telling us something while their soul was being recycled. Now, what does he keep on saying? This is the third news announcement where I keep on hearing souls. Not passengers, not people, souls. So the transmigration of the soul through its recycling, when it doesn't do what it needs to do in the previous period of life, and it gets recycled, gets purified and recycled, and it comes back, it has to do something. Now, what it is, it could be something like help a little lady over the, you know, across over the street, or it can be something big. We don't know. But that's the whole idea of living, you know. But the point here is that there's information in this event. It's the way people use words. It's the numerology or the gematria or the sense that people have, you know, in the juxtaposition of certain events, like the military tied to civilian aircraft having a lot more people with a military aircraft that affected the civilian population. there's a piece of information there to glean from.
Their communities, as people are notified, I can't imagine. And I know it's gone from a rescue mission to a recovery mission. And we're with all the first responders that are moving actively too. So at the Defense Department, our thoughts and prayers go out. We are actively investigating to find out what happened and why. And as we get updates, you will have them. God bless.
God bless.
Pete Hegseth.
See,
the
you know,
new
God
Secretary
bless.
of
You know,
Defense.
God, these words are really important to pay attention to. God bless. All right, you know, it seems like it's something benign. Why the hell did I say Godspeed in the text in the post on January 18th? Now, Godspeed is more like God be with you, or safe travels. I'm telling you, a 9/11 event is coming. It's coming.
And we were told that he was going to hold a news conference. The stage was set, but he did record that video and post it. Not sure if that news conference will happen a little bit later on. We'll make sure to bring it to you, though, as it does. Want to pop up this live image for you right here on your screen. This is where, in a matter of moments, we will have the Tulsi Gabbard confirmation hearing. We're going to make sure to bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox as it does get underway. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, but a lot more live coverage in just a few.
All right, what I want to do is, just to mention where the market's. So the market's open. At the S&P 500 is trading at 6,070. VIX is down by, it's trading at 15.57. The Euro USD is trading at 1.04. Oil is trading at $73 a barrel. And Bitcoin ETF BITO is trading at 25.7. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 154.04. Let's go to Bloomberg to see what they have to say, and then maybe we'll go back to Live Now to get more information about the crash. But I'm telling you, this crash, random event, accident, it was an accident, but there's information in it to tell us something. It's warning us on something. Now, what it is, I don't know. I have my own opinion on it, but
To speak with Captain Levy.
Yes.
I mean, that was something, 40 years
Yeah.
with American Airlines. He was just fabulous as well. But again, thank you. And a shout out again with Bloomberg Daybreak, Nathan Hager, who stayed around. He usually just exit his people and them out the door.
Yeah.
You know, hey, Evans, breakfast and all that.
Exactly.
He stayed around today for us. So we
On the ground.
appreciate that.
Yep.
We leave you with the Dow up 100, SPX up 0.5%, NASDAQ does better, up 0.6%. Alex Steele's waiting for a package from UPS.
Yes.
It may get there, it may not get there. We'll have to see. Their earnings come in light, to say the least. Again, thanks to the team for a terrific day of reporting on this terrible plane crash. See you tomorrow from New York, from Boston, from Washington, and around the world. We're on YouTube. Subscribe.
all right. So they're going to commercial break. So I'm going to plug some products. You might hear some noise in the background. They're doing some construction outside. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics that I have. I have it in a powdered form or a veggie cap form. Very high quality. It's important to take a good probiotic every day. Get a good gut biome. You're going to lower inflammation by having a good gut biome. You're going to have better metabolism. You're going to be able to absorb your energy better. You're going to have a better functioning liver, and your mood will improve. Less chance of depression. Better mental acuity with a good gut biome. Your skin will improve. Your hair will improve. Lots of your bodily systems will improve with a good gut biome. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the veggie cap version or the powdered version. Now, I take the powdered version because I take lots of different powders and I mix it with soft food like hummus or yogurt. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the very high quality probiotics that I have. When you improve your gut biome, you're also improving your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements, get the great probiotics that I offer. I also have I have X Spaces that's open. So if anyone that wants to ask questions, please do. You know, this is supposed to be interactive. You can do a chat, ask a question, or tell me your opinion on what you think is going on. Join X Spaces, just request the mic. I'll give it to you so you can ask the question or give me your opinion on something. It's supposed to be interactive. The show is interactive. It's not about me just talking. Please go to my website, get the structural nanosilver soaps. These soaps are very high quality. You can get it in charcoal tea tree right now on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5 when you do an order. It gives you $5 off. I'm trying to find ways for you to be able to get healthy, help this channel, help the work that I do, and follow my protocol and have longer longevity, have a better vitality, slow down the aging process, improve your endocrine system, improve your immune system. This is a win-win. Now where else are you, coming to listen to, me do some sort of, strange Kabbalistic numerology about how this plane crash is tied to 9/11 potentially, in a strange way. There is information in random events. There's no doubt about that. There's information. Everything's a fib sequence, and a sequence within a sequence, and things are embedded. The whole universe was created that way. So all systems, social systems, biological systems, the physical universe, it is a fractal. And that's why this kind of works. There's a hint of it. An event is a hint of something else in the future because it's branching off. The fib sequence is branching off of another fib sequence. Okay. Sometimes I go off on tangents. I apologize. All right, let's go to
Fox 5 DC team for the latest information. But if you are just joining us, I do want to go over some of the basics. As we know that an American Airlines jet and an Army helicopter collided mid-air over the Potomac River near Reagan National Airport. That's just outside of Washington, D.C. The D.C. fire chief now saying this has switched from a rescue mission to a recovery operation. He says 28 bodies have been recovered from the wreckage, 27 of those from the passenger jet and 1 from the Army helicopter. A lot of information here about to appear on your screen, but federal investigators say the passenger jet, which departed from Wichita, Kansas, carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew members, was landing at Ronald Reagan National Airport. The Army helicopter with 3 soldiers on board was on a training flight at the time. The crash, which happened just before 9 last night local time, was within some of the most tightly controlled and monitored airspace in the world. We're talking just about 3 miles south of the White House and of the Capitol. American Airlines Flight 5342 was inbound to Reagan National at an altitude of about 400 feet and a speed of about 140 miles per hour when it had a rapid loss of altitude over the Potomac River. The aircraft is built to carry up to 70 passengers. Again, we know there were 60 passengers on board.
Now the thing is that 70 is important religiously because of the 70 nations that spun off of Noah. And there's also 70 has a kind of a Kabbalistic flair to it. So what's the sense that I get? This is all real time. This is all real. These thoughts are all real time. All right. The sense that I get is the plane, the vessel for transport is capable of holding 70 plus crew. It's capable of holding 70, but only 60 were there. So that means the vessel was only partially full, 6/7, 6/7. So the destination where they were going, the transmigration of souls weren't fully full for this event. It was only partially full. Now remember, to get that 6, it's the skaters plus the 3 from the military to get to the 9. If it was 7, all right, so 60, the 6 from the 60, or 6 from the skaters. Now, if there were more people on the plane, I wouldn't be able to take the 7. The 7 wouldn't work with the 3; it would turn into a 10. So through the transmigration of souls within this vessel, it had to be 70. It could not be. It had to be 60. It could not be 70. To allow for the random event to tell us something that's happening into the future. There's this, the point of, it's really hard to explain this. There's a transmigration of souls. They were born, all these people that died on the plane, they all were born on different dates, different years. But there is a amalgamation of the transmigration of these souls within this vessel. And an event happened to take the souls of these different time periods that they were born in, because they're all part of the same root spark. And that something, and that the history of this event, the information of this event is telling us something that is happening, that's going to happen in the future. But this transmigration of the souls could not have taken place, and that information would be different. It would be too offsetted if it was full. The vessel was partially full. Now, what does that mean? One interpretation is that the partial vessel is that they are the first transmigration, and there are 10 others that will go later. That 10 other may be the people that are tied to the event that is with a 9/11 like event. So that, again, this is real time. I'm trying to explain it as it's flowing. The transmigration of the souls in the vessel wasn't full, and they left. The information is telling us of a future event that's a 9/11 like event. There are 10 souls that could have been in that vessel, but they're not, because those 10 souls are going to be part of a 9/11 like event. And to allow for this 9/11 event to happen. If the 10 other souls were on that vessel, the 9/11 like event wouldn't have happened. All right. Now we're going to go to Patel's confirmation hearing. I know what I'm saying is crazy, but it's deep Kabbalistic stuff. I'm not holy enough to even to get the, an unfiltered version of it. I'm just not religious enough to do it. Some people are, but I'm not. But I do sense something. It's cloudy, but I see something's coming.
Please, Mr. Patel made his comments while discussing an article in the New York Times exposing grave miscommunication between the Department of Defense and the DC National Guard. So I would encourage people to follow up on that. Senator, tell us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ranking member.
colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee, it's my honor to introduce Cash Patel, President Trump's nominee to be FBI Director. I've completed due diligence on his life and career, and I'm convinced that Cash possesses significant expertise and ironclad commitment to justice, and he's an outstanding choice to lead the FBI. Cash's parents are Indian immigrants of Gujarati ancestry. They're up here on the front row. The Gujarat state is a melting pot of religions, including Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, with temples, mosques, and other religious sites scattered across the state. His father was raised in Uganda, but his family had to flee the country to escape repression under Idi Amin. His mother was born in Tanzania. They met and married in India and ultimately made their way to New York City by way of Canada, where his parents, along with 7 brothers and sisters and their spouses and at least a half a dozen kids, lived under the same roof. His parents raised Cash in the Hindu faith, and they instilled in him the values of hard work and education. Cash is a devout Hindu, and consistent with his faith, he's shown respect to people of all faiths. Cash attended the University of Richmond, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice and history. He went to Pace University School of Law, where he earned his J.D. and an international law certificate from the University College of London, Faculty of Laws. Cash began his career as a public defender in Florida, where he led or co-led more than 60 jury trials in state and federal court. Cash clearly demonstrated a devotion to upholding the rule of law and defending the rights of individuals. Cash led the defense of Jose Buitrago in United States versus Buitrago, a high-profile case in Florida in 2015. Buitrago was one of the Colombian nationals arrested in a major drug bust involving Operation Backroom. Cash and his co-counsel successfully argued that key evidence was withheld by the prosecution, leading to Buitrago's release. I suspect some of Cash's disdain for prosecutorial misconduct stemmed from this experience. Cash was hired as a senior counsel on the House Permanent Select Subcommittee on Intelligence Committee, I should say, in 2017. He told me he distinctly remembers my friend Trey Gowdy comment shortly after they were introduced. He said in Trey's dialect, "Cash, Congress is where righteous investigations go to die. I hope you're ready." I think Cash was ready, and he went on to establish a solid reputation for pursuing the facts, and from there, he held senior posts at the NSC, the Department of Defense, and the DNI. Since leaving the administration in 2020, Cash has written articles and books on national security, law, and governance. Through his work as an author, Cash continues to advocate for justice and transparency, and to be ever vigilant in defending our great democracy and the rule of law. Colleagues, I created a Cash bingo card that I have available to any of my colleagues that would like it on the other side of the aisle. Some may view this as an unserious caricature and not appropriate for this committee. Sadly, I consider it a serious caricature of what I expect to be witnessed today. I think we'll have words like enemies list and deep state. I've already X'd out 4 boxes in the opening statements alone. The fact of the matter is, some people will be here to simply substantiate a false narrative. At worst, they may be just going through an unfounded litany of quote.
A lot is going on with the Senate because there's also the Tulsi Gabbard hearing too for confirmation. So lots happening in the news today.
The Senate, I hope I've established a reputation for being fair, doing my homework, and taking tough positions that have been met with harsh criticism. Heck, I've even been censured by my entire state and 30 counties for taking tough positions. And I stand by those decisions today and my decision to support Kash Patel. When President Trump announced his intent to nominate Kash, I contacted Trey Gowdy and others who worked with Kash, and they gave me glowing recommendations. So I called Kash on December the 2nd and offered to help him with his nomination. Since then, we have spent hours together, in person and on the phone. I've asked him difficult questions, and I've urged him to reach out to members across the aisle. In fact, Kash Patel has met with 60 members of the U.S. Senate. Every member except the last 3 who were sworn in, and the majority of the members on the other side of the dais in this committee and members off the committee. Chair Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, friends and colleagues on the committee, I've completed my due diligence of Kash Patel, and I am honored to provide my strongest recommendation for his confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that introduction. Before I swear you, I want to make clear that you, before you give your statement, if you want to introduce family and friends in the audience, you're welcome to do that. Would you please stand? Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. You may proceed.
Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I must start with a word of prayer for the tragic accident that befell our nation last night, where we lost civilians and service members. I pray for their families. I pray for law enforcement and military personnel, and I pray for their souls, and hopefully God will find them peace in the near future.
This is another point that I'm making. They're focused on the souls. This is a transmigration issue. The transmigration of souls and the information of a random event for a future event that's taking place. It's hard to describe what I'm talking about here. It's very...
And their relentless love. When President Trump informed me of his intention to nominate me as the director of the FBI, I was deeply honored. Sitting here today, I carry not only the dreams of my parents, but also the hopes of millions of Americans who stand for justice, fairness, and the rule of law. My commitment to these principles is deeply rooted in my family's history, which has profoundly shaped my worldview. My father fled Idi Amin's genocidal dictatorship in Uganda, where 300,000 men, women, and children were killed based on their ethnicity, just because they happen to look like me. My mother is originally from Tanzania. She studied in India, as did my dad, and they were married there. They would later emigrate to New York, as the senator pointed out, where I was born, and we were raised in a household of my father's 7 siblings, their spouses, and at least half a dozen children. That's the only way we knew how to do things at the time, in the 70s and 80s, the Indian way. But we would soon learn the
Breaking news is taking place that Palestinian prisoners are freed.
Protecting the rights of the Constitution is of the utmost importance to me and has been every single time I've taken that oath of office. The recent terrorist attacks in New Orleans tragically claimed the lives of 14 innocent Americans and serve as a stark reminder that our national security is at threat, both internally and externally. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice, where I serve, play a pivotal role in securing our freedoms and our safeties for American citizens. If confirmed as the next FBI director, I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission. That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so, and to never make a prosecutorial decision that is solely the province of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. For the first 8 years after law school, I served as a public defender, first for Miami-Dade County and later for the Southern District of Florida. At that time, I represented some pretty awful human beings, charged with some pretty heinous crimes. But what I learned there was the core value that has been enshrined in me since. That due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst, then there can be no due process for anyone, and our constitutional republic fails. But I battled on that hill for that due process. I would later serve in the Obama Justice Department as a terrorism prosecutor in the National Security Division, where we successfully contributed to the prosecutions of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and others. I was honored to receive the 2017 Assistant Attorney General's Award from Loretta Lynch for my work in helping the Ugandans bring members of Al-Shabaab to justice for murdering 74 innocent people, including an American. I would also receive the Human Intelligence Award from the intelligence community for related work on that mission. My experiences at the National Security Division and would later be followed by my experiences on the National Security Council as Senior Director of Counterterrorism, and later as a Deputy Director of National Intelligence responsible for the production, creation, and promulgation of the Presidential Daily Briefing, our nation's most sensitive classified information and secrets to protect our country. My time in the White House was preceded by my time right here in Congress as a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, where I spearheaded the investigation that exposed serious FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses by members of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That misconduct eroded the public trust in our FBI. The erosion of trust, as Chairman Grassley pointed out, is all too low today. 40% of Americans have trust in the FBI. In order to get it back, there's a twofold track, Senator. One, violent crime is exploding in this country, and we cannot afford them to allow it to run away. We must tackle violent crime. Just in 2023 alone, there was 100,000 rapes, 100,000 drug overdoses, and 17,000 homicides. The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded, and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. The way we do this, we let good cops be cops. We let law enforcement, and we provide them with the tools necessary and resources they need to get after violent crime. The second way we do this on equal track is aggressive constitutional oversight from Congress. The public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to that full transparency. Members of Congress have unfortunately submitted hundreds of questions that have been unanswered by the FBI in recent times. That will not occur if I am confirmed. All appropriate requests for information will be responded to expeditiously and fully. I am committed to working alongside the dedicated men and women of the FBI. They are warriors of justice, and I will always have their backs because they have the backs of the American people. I look forward to answering your questions, and I want to take a moment to thank my family, my friends, people who traveled here, and my entire team that has made this day possible. God bless America, and I look forward to your questions.
Seven minutes, first round, is that right? 7 minutes, 3 minutes the second round. Mr. Patel, I'm not going to go through all the things that you've done through your career because I said those are my no opening statements, but Democrats on the committee say you don't have experience. What are you most proud of from your career in public service?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the question. It's really humbling to be afforded the opportunity to have served this country for 16 years. But I think what I'm most proud of is my work in national security, protecting the no-fail mission, returning American hostages, killing high-value terrorists that brought hate and destruction to our shores. I've served that mission in Democratic and Republican administrations, and it is the one mission that we cannot fail, and it is the one mission where the FBI must play a critical role.
As you well know, you and I discussed this in my office, whistleblowers are critical to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. Their courage to come forward and make legally protected disclosures about government wrongdoing benefits the country. I think they're politically, they are good American citizens, just want the government to do what it's supposed to do. I think they're treated by bureaucracies, not just in the FBI, but throughout the bureaucracy, like skunks at a picnic. Will you protect whistleblowers from retaliation, unlike former Director Wray, and promote a culture at the FBI that values whistleblowers' important contributions?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I share in your beliefs about the importance of whistleblowers.
So we've spent a lot of taxpayers' money ruining whistleblowers. Will you commit to ensuring that no taxpayer money will be used to identify and retaliate against whistleblowers?
Senator, if I'm confirmed, it will not.
Okay. You and I have heard a lot of criticism about various statements about January 6th. You said, quote, those who broke actual laws should be prosecuted, end of quote. But you've also called out the partisan nature of prosecutions and compared how the Biden Justice Department treated January 6th defenders with how they ignored many other crimes. Those include crimes related to illegal immigration, as well as riots that took place around the country. So explain your position on January 6th to this committee, and how do you respond to critics who say that you're anti-law enforcement?
Mr. Chairman, I greatly appreciate the question, the opportunity to discuss that. If anyone wants to consider me as anti-law enforcement, then look at my 16 years of government service. Whether I was trying 60 jury trials in state and federal court upholding the rights of the indigent and breathing life into constitutional due process, or later as a national security prosecutor, where I served this country and overseas. And later, when I was a Joint Special Operations Command civilian, embedded with SEAL Team 6 in Delta, chasing down some of the most high-value target terrorists there are on this earth, and successfully achieving a mission and state. I have always respected law enforcement. I have taken that oath and will take that oath again, God willing, to be the next director of the FBI. As for January 6th, I have repeatedly, often, publicly, and privately said, there can never be a tolerance for violence against law enforcement. And anyone that commits an act of violence against law enforcement must be investigated, prosecuted, and imprisoned. And on January 6th, I said the same thing about acts against law enforcement. The Capitol Police, who I have served with, and when I was Chief of Staff of the Department of Defense, rushing to the aid of the members of this committee and your colleagues to provide the National Guard, was my top mission priority, not politics. And that is my love of this country, to protect our laws and our way of life. And it was no different. If there's any ever corruption, I have been the first to call it out. And I will continue to call out corruption in government service, because it is a privilege to serve this nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Outside of this committee, and some people on this committee have accused you of promoting the QAnon movement. My colleagues have already asked your future boss, Mr. Bondi, any questions about this. I think it's easy to see these attacks for what they are, guilt by association. Are you a follower or promoter of QAnon?
No, Senator. In fact, I have publicly, including in the interviews provided to this committee, rejected outright QAnon baseless conspiracy theories or any other baseless conspiracy theories. They must be addressed head on with the truth, and I will continue to do that.
I think it would have been hilarious if he said, no, I'm not a follower of QAnon. What if he said he is QAnon? But that's just a joke.
Person hands, this has affected you personally. You, along with even members of my staff, were the victims of FBI overreach when they secretly subpoenaed your records during the investigation into Crossfire Hurricane. Inspector General Horowitz of Justice Department was right to say actions like this have a quote, unquote, chilling effect on whistleblowers. How do you intend to make sure that this kind of misconduct never happens again.
Senator, this may be one of the scenarios that most uniquely qualifies me to take command of the FBI. Having been the victim of government overreach and a weaponized system of justice and law enforcement, I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. And as the Biden Inspector General determined, those activities by the FBI and DOJ were wholly improper and not predicated upon law and facts. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost, financially and personally. And most importantly, I will make sure that no American is subjected to death threats like I was, and subjected to moving their residences like I was, because of government overreach, because of leaks of information about my personal status. If confirmed as FBI Director, Mr. Chairman, you have my commitment that no one in this country will feel that pain.
Senator Garber.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I woke up this morning to National Public Radio, and they had an item on there about what has happened to those who were given blanket clemency by President Trump. One of these individuals was a man named Matthew Huddle. Are you familiar with him?
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
Matthew Huddle.
If you could remind me, Senator.
Well, I was reminded again this morning, he's a man who's been found guilty of numerous crimes. The one described this morning was an outrageous situation where he beat his 3-year-old child to a point where the poor kid couldn't even sit down for a week. Mr. Huddle was one of the demonstrators who came to the Capitol on January 6th. He was incarcerated, and charged with, pled guilty to crimes that he had committed, violence against police officers. After he was released by President Trump, he returned to his home state of Indiana. A few days later, he was stopped on the road, pulled a gun on a policeman. The policeman, sheriff's deputy, turned and shot and killed him. This is not the only instance of a person who received President Trump's clemency committing another crime. Peter Schwartz was mentioned this morning on the radio. 38 criminal convictions, 38. He'd been sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was released because of the president's unconditional clemency, which was given to him as well. So I guess my question is this. Was President Donald Trump wrong to give blanket clemency to the January 6th defendants?
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on that. One, the power of the presidential pardon is just that, president.
Well, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th. And I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Senator, I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered 2 FBI agents, Agent Colders and Williams' family, deserve better than to have the man that point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them released from prison. So it goes both ways.
Leonard Peltier was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old and he's sentenced to home confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
That's true, he did. He went to prison for it, should have. My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we don't have 50 homicides in a
So
day.
you just want to answer the question.
I am clear.
I don't think we're safer. That Matthew Huddle was set up back.
The way I would have answered it is just that even with them being released because of all the crime that's taking place in the country in the aggregate. We're not less safe. We're not more safe. We're about the same level of safety that's going on. And the bigger issue is that inner cities have a lot of crime that's happening. So focusing on one or two of these kind of situations, even 10 or 20, that's not looking at the big picture. The big picture in the United States is that there's an erosion of God, country, and family. There's a lack of ethics. And when you have a lack of ethics, what happens is the society devolves into crime, corruption, and, you know, unfortunately, people die. That's the bigger issue.
I'm very proud of the Cash Foundation, the $1.3 million we've given to families in need across this country, including active duty service members, police officers, putting kids in college, and helping people in disaster relief areas rebuild their homes and their communities.
1&0 LLC, are you familiar with that?
Sorry?
1&0 LLC.
I believe, Senator, you're referring to the LLC that one of the individuals has his private business with.
Is it part of the Cash Foundation in any way?
Only in that one of the members of the board has that LLC for his outside business.
Andrew Ellis?
I believe that's his name, yes.
Yes. Do you know how much was paid to him from your charitable work?
Yes, like any other charity, we had to go out and fundraise, something I'm sure every member of this committee is familiar with. We use digital marketing campaigns, and I believe we paid a digital marketing company through 1&0 $250,000 to raise $500,000, which we gave away to families in need, like when hurricanes struck Florida, Texas, and North Carolina.
We will be going through the details of your foundation and expenditures with questions for record that the chairman has mentioned.
Look
We'll have
forward
a
to
chance to answer those under oath. Mr. Patel, you frequently associated with and sometimes praised extremist figures with well-documented histories of racism, anti-Semitism, conspiracies, and the like. In September of 2023, you appeared with Laura Loomer at an event promoting your book, this one here. You shared a photo of yourself and Loomer in which you held her book and she held yours. Just a few months before this event, Ms. Loomer posted on X that the September 11 terrorist attacks were, quote, an inside job.
It was an inside job.
First Lady, Casey DeSantis, of exaggerating her cancer diagnosis to gain voter sympathy. A number of my Republican colleagues on this committee have criticized Ms. Loomer's extremism. One of my colleagues described her as a, quote, crazy conspiracy theorist who regularly utters disgusting garbage. Another called her really toxic. Given all of this, why did you associate with Ms. Loomer?
Senator, as you can see, I took a photograph with an individual who showed up at a book event. I don't believe I'm guilty by association, and I certainly don't believe that an individual who was the first minority to serve as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for this country is a racist in any way, and I detest any conjecture to the contrary.
You familiar with the Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with prominent neo-Nazi. There are more. Ted Nugent goes on, list goes on. I'm just asking, when it comes to your association with individuals, why are so many of them in this category?
My association, as you loosely define it, is by appearing in media over 1,000 times to take on people who are putting on conspiratorial theories and to devour them of their false impressions and to talk to them about the truth. That is something that I will always continue to fight for, Senator.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. We'll eventually talk about the FBI. That's the job you're up here for, right?
Let me just plug really quick. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. get the Manuka honey lozenges or the elderberry zinc lozenges. Get a couple bags for your household. Be prepared for the allergy season. Be prepared for the cold season. Once you have that irritation, take the lozenges right away. Have them stored at your work and at home. Be prepared. It's really important. Please go to my store, get the Manuka honey lozenges and the elderberry zinc lozenges. Use discount 5, you get $5 off.
Racism as an individual.
Unfortunately, Senator, yes, I want to get into those details of my family
Now,
here.
let's get into a few of them. Tell me about it.
Well, if you look at the record from January 6th, where I testified before that committee, because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat, I was called a detestable, and I'll apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sandnigger who had no right being in this country. You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
Okay. Growing up, were you subject to racism?
Yes, sir.
Now, I think the reason you're here has a lot to do with your work on Crossfire Hurricane. Are you familiar with that FBI operation?
I am, Senator.
So Senator Durbin mentioned the church report and the history of abuse, but he failed to mention Crossfire Hurricane. He failed to mention the Horowitz report. Wonder why? If you're waiting for these guys over here to figure that out, you're gonna die waiting. So this is the Nunes memo. You work for Mr. Nunes over that on the
Sorry?
outside. David Nunes.
Sorry?
Are you familiar with this memo by the Foreign Intelligence Service Act abuses the
Yes,
Department of Justice?
absolutely.
Did you help write this memo?
I did as a staffer.
Okay, I'll put this in the record.
Thank
In this memo, you kind of dissected the abuses of Crossfire Hurricane, right?
I did, Senator.
And the Mueller investigation. So the Crossfire Hurricane investigators, 2 of them were Strzok and Page. Are you familiar with them?
I am, Senator.
Okay, it was opened up on July the 31st, 2016. And here's what Strzok said. And damn, this feels momentous because this matters. The other one did too. But that was to ensure we didn't F something up. This matters because this matters. So super glad to be on this voyage with you. That's the Page. And Page responds a couple of months later, he's not ever going to be President, right? Talking about Trump. Strzok, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Is it fair to say that the people in charge of investigating Crossfire Hurricane hated Trump's guts?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. That statement, along with the statements from the sources.
Are those days over in the FBI, you hope?
Well, if they're not, they will be.
Okay, good. You know who Carter Page was?
I do, Senator.
You know that the FBI secured warrants against him on 4 different occasions?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know that the information that they relied upon came from the Steele dossier?
I do.
Was it you that were able to find out that the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap?
Yes, Senator, we followed the money and we exposed the fraud that was.
And the primary subsource was Igor Danchenko, right?
That's correct, Senator.
And he was actually a Russian analyst.
That's right.
Are you aware that in January he told the FBI that, let's see, what did he tell the FBI? Steele had no proof to support the statements, and it was just talk. The primary subsource explained to the FBI that his information came from word of mouth and hearsay, conversations he had with friends over beers, and some of the information were statements he heard made in jest. And he told the FBI this in January
That's
of
right.
2017. And they got 2 more warrants after that.
That's correct.
Are you aware that the FBI had volumes information that the Steele dossier was a bunch of bullshit and nobody ever told anybody at the top.
I am, sir, we exposed.
Or they lied about being told.
That's correct.
So are you aware of the fact that the FISA court rebuked the FBI? Are you aware of the fact that an FBI lawyer went to jail because he misled the court by manipulating a email from the CIA?
I am.
Do you believe that Crossfire Hurricane was one of the most disgusting episodes in FBI history of a corrupt investigation led by corrupt people who wanted to take Donald Trump down?
Yes, sir.
You think that's why you're in this chair today, to fix that?
I think that's a big.
Without Crossfire Hurricane, this guy wouldn't be here. And my friends on the other side, like pulling teeth, Horowitz investigation, the Inspector General labeled this fraudulent at its core, mismanaged at its core, running stop signs. At every turn, they went forward when they should have stopped. The Durham report said it was obviously politically motivated. FBI agents were telling anybody and everybody that would listen, this is not reliable, this is not trustworthy, but they plowed on. And because of you and Trey Gowdy and others, we now know about this. Everybody who signed the warrant under questioning by me said if they knew then what they know now, they wouldn't have signed the warrant. Comey said that. Yates said that. Rosenstein said that. The reason you're here is because most of the public, almost every Republican believes that the FBI has been used continuously in a political fashion, ignoring evidence, making up evidence, lying to get Donald Trump. And when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they told every social media outlet in October 2020, oh, that's Russian disinformation. That was BS too. Right before the election, the FBI intervened to shut reporting on the Hunter laptop down as being Russian misinformation, according to Zuckerberg. Do you promise all of us those days are over at the FBI?
Yes, Senator, they are.
Are you proud of what you did to find all that?
Absolutely.
You think that's why you're here today, is to make sure that never happens again?
The American people deserve just that.
Thanks.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Patel. I remember January 6th. Colleagues running through our halls to flee the mob, colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot, us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us said those violent rioters should be pardoned. Personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to
You know,
do
he's just trying to
violence.
demonize Trump supporters in the January 6th situation. Like I said in previous videos recently, January 6th is a symptom. What happened is a symptom of a deeper disease. And that disease is representative government not paying attention to we the people, and the representative government is only paying attention to their own individual profitability and the K Street lobby group. They don't care about the little guy. They don't care about the people that actually vote them into office. They say they do. What they really care about is campaign financing through big donors. And they get that money by doing favors with the lobbying group. They don't care about the little person. So when the little person keeps on having their life become harder and their dreams more unattainable, we're leading towards a situation where in the United States, there will be a revolution. And that revolution is not going to be like 1700s. it's going to be like the French Revolution. And that means the aristocracy is going to be will be attacked by the masses, by the mob. Now, we don't want that, because that would be actually the end of our rule of government. But the thing is that there's a disease here, and as representative government not paying attention to we the people. And it's moving towards a French Revolution.
Ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly.
The reality of the situation, through the Smith Modernization Act, the media, mainstream media, and social media have been complicit with working with the deep state. That's a fact. That is a fact. You just turn on CNN randomly and you can see it. What about what was going on Facebook during the crisis of 2020? What about all the censorship that was going on YouTube? You're telling me that social media was not embedded with the FBI?
Do with the creation of that.
Is that you reposting it was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness. And the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6th offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger.
If conduct shows character, then why is it that the Democratic Party seems to hate God, country, and family so much? Are we supposed to interpret that in a certain way, Senator?
That they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings. And I yield my 1 second back.
Before, Senator Cornyn, you said you'd like to explain something, I forget the point he made. You can do that now if you want to.
Simply this, Senator. In the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service is an exemplar of how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as the director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience to the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
That's a great way of phrasing it. The reality of the situation is that one of the arms of weaponization by the Democratic Party is weaponizing the judicial branch and the FBI. And that's exactly what happened during the whole first Trump administration and through, re-election cycle. The Democratic Party weaponized the FBI and the justice system. So you have judges in the judicial branch that are part of this whole apparatus that the Democratic Party is controlling. Now, what's interesting is that this seems to have been kind of like building up, right? Even during, the Nixon days. Now, did Nixon do something wrong? Yes. But what's also interesting is that prosecutors were talking to judges behind the scenes as they were trying to find ways to prosecute Nixon, which was highly illegal, what they did. So the Democratic Party, going all the way back to the 1970s, have been doing this horse shit. Even though Nixon was wrong. But how they prosecuted Nixon, or how they were trying to prosecute Nixon, was illegal.
Exceptional nation.
It's the greatest nation.
Your family went through a lot to get here,
They sure did.
and your life story is, I think, a great example of people pursuing the American dream. You believe a large part of what makes America an exceptional nation is the rule of law.
It is one of the fundamental precepts that determines that.
And why is that?
Because without a singular application of the rule of law, we go back to the Uganda that my father fled.
I believe that the two most important institutions in America to preserve and protect and enforce the rule of law are the FBI and the Department of Justice. And the sort of politicalization that Senator Graham and others have already talked about during the Crossfire Hurricane investigation or project of James Comey at the FBI and the abuse of intelligence tools like Title I of Section 702 are a betrayal of American values and the adherence to the rule of law. And I think your biggest task is going to be, along with Pam Bondi at the Office of the Attorney General, is to restore the rule of law to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Are you willing to do that?
Absolutely, sir.
Without regard to partisan affiliation or politics?
Absolutely.
Do you believe President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, needs access to all of the lawfully available intelligence that can be collected by the American intelligence community in order to inform him so that he can make good judgments as commander-in-chief to assure the safety and security of the American people?
Having been responsible for the collection and publication and promulgation of that intelligence, I firmly believe he and every president must have it.
And so you would not support any impractical or perhaps immaterial or unworkable ways to inhibit the flow of that information to President Trump?
No, I would not.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is the most important law that most Americans have never heard of. But when I was questioning my fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this, we talked about some of the reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years. This has been an ongoing conversation here in Congress. People like my colleague here, Senator Lee, and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a long way to help protect the privacy rights of American citizens. But let me just point out some of the improvements that have been made over the years. This is not the same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first term. Please remember of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out. But one of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants in, as a public defender. You understand that what probable cause is required, what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge in order to get a warrant. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past. And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages. Having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not.
You know, I think that the United States military, you know, and the agencies have a really hard time getting hostages. They had a hard time getting hostages during the Iran hostage crisis in the 70s. What about the hostages that's going on in Gaza? Gaza has American citizens. Why the hell aren't they here? Why aren't they back home? Complete failure by our military and by our agencies. Complete failure.
Demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, just in real time, Senator, excuse me, it's almost impossible to make that function and serve the national interest.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you point out the lack of trust. Any of these tools can be abused by people who are willing to break the law or abuse these tools or violate the public trust. Director Ratcliffe again used, I thought, a helpful analogy.
It's not just people. Of course, individuals could break, but the bigger issue is that it's orchestrated by a cabal. Now, that cabal has a tendency to be aligned with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, in general, is corrupt.
Appropriately protect national security, but they can also be abused by people who are willing to cross a line they should not cross.
They're both true, and that's why we need to work together to make sure Americans have trust again in these surveillance measures that we utilize to protect our country.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
God, just her voice.
Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the men and women of the FBI.
I'm going to commercial, please. support my work. Make sure that you subscribe to all the channels and purchase the products. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen peptides. It has a great amino acid profile. You can see on the screen here. You can also see the label on my website. Improve your bones, improve your skin, improve your joints, improve your hair, your nails. This is a great product. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. There's a big scooper in here. It's a powder. You take it every day. Some people mix it with soft food. Some people mix it with milk. Some people mix it with just a smoothie or, some sort of, shake or filtered water. It's up to you, but take it every day and do a little bit of resistance training. And when you do that, you're going to improve your skeletal system. You're going to improve your muscular system, your skin, your joints. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the collagen peptides and use the discount 5. It's all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off. I also have collagen in a skincare box called the Anti-Aging Skincare Beginners and Advanced box, if you would like to get that. Everything that's in an anti-aging box or a longevity box is designed to be at a lower price point. So it's cheaper to get the boxes, the anti-aging boxes and the longevity boxes, than the individual items if you want multiple items. But it's up to you. You can purchase items individually, or you can purchase them in these anti-aging or longevity boxes. You can use, for any order, you can use discount 5. Please go to my store, get the collagen, take it every day, improve your joints and your bones. Really important. Take it. I take it. Lots of people take it, right? And if you stack it with other stuff that I keep on telling you, you're going to really supercharge your health. Please go to my store, get the collagen. Her voice just...
Perform clinical trials before you made that claim.
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did promote this supplement and told people that it would reverse or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
So I don't want to have this playing because of the censorship on YouTube, because there's going to be a strike. So let me go, because what happens is anyone talking about remedies during the crisis of 2020 gets strikes. So I have to be very careful on the censorship on YouTube, because I do repost this on YouTube. So let's just let her go through her questions here. Let me drop in and see if we can play it.
For an actual RICO statute violation for criminally organizing the United States government to break the law to rig presidential elections. Did you say that, yes or no?
And Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay, again, we'll put it on the record. X22 report podcast 20. That is from, I'll give you the date, about a year ago. One of the names on your list was Bill Barr. Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said I have nothing but total respect and admiration for the job done by William Barr as Attorney General of the United States. Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them, who've been referred to as an enemies list? You called them deep state after serving his country as the Attorney General of the United States. Is he on your list because of a personal vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I asked you,
And-
I actually used the words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put at the
There's a
top.
glossary
Against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the United States. Is it because of a personal vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal vendetta against him.
Okay, he said about you, you would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment, as noted by Senator Durbin as deputy director to the FBI would happen over his dead body. Is it, yes or no, why you would put him on the list of deep state as a former Attorney General, Trump Attorney General of the United States, because he wouldn't break the law for Donald Trump? Is that why?
Absolutely not.
As you know, he repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that he did not see evidence of fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. Did you say in February of 2021 that the election stuff was never my job and I stayed out of that stuff?
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but I'm sure you're reading a piece of something.
You said it on Pushback on a podcast. Is it true, though, that in December of 2020...
This is totally bullshit. This is total bullshit because she's taking everything out of context. How do you know? I mean, even the person that's listening doesn't even understand what the context is.
Fully tamper with voting machines in the U.S. and switch votes for Trump from Trump to Biden. Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was chief of staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate anyway.
If that came out of testimony before Congress, I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
Again, you're reading a quote. I take
It's
you're
the
reading it accurately.
CPAC 223-24. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's
Steve Bannon's podcast. You know, the thing is, if the election fraud is, and there's proof of impropriety, then they should be prosecuted, right? I mean, you know, she's all about gotcha questions. I gotcha. You said this on a podcast. It's out of context. You don't even know what the context is. Her voice is annoying. Hey.
But that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken. Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time, we all know that, appointed by President Trump, that during his tenure, the applications to the FBI has in fact tripled. Do you think people would be applying to that agency like in those numbers if they thought it was so corrupt?
American public's trust in it is at 40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI headquarters should be shut down and reopened as a museum of the deep state?
So, Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
Let's see, you did a second round. Before I call on Senator.
Could you just answer the question if he said that the FBI headquarters, where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism, should be shut down and opened as a deep state,
Mr. Chair.
as a museum? Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
Mr. Chair.
Maybe we should shut down the deep state. Maybe we should really restructure the national security. Maybe we should start pulling away the post 9/11 powers that these agencies obtained under false pretense. God.
FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Mr. Chairman, I am quoting his own words from September of 2024. It is his own words. It is not some conspiracy. It is what
More than 50% of the American public wants to turn our agency buildings into a museum.
Just parliamentary inquiry. It was on time. It wasn't disputing any of the debate, but I intend to keep to my 7 minutes, and I appreciate you keeping everyone to it. If we go over, can we have that decrement against the time in the second round? If a member goes over, but that was actually 10 minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure that I want to, sometimes it's faster to get things done here, just letting people shout and and then it does to shut them up.
Mr. Chairman.
You're a wise man, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Before we go to Lee,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, what do you want?
I love this guy. Mr. Chairman, I'm like Senator Tillis. I mean, if we're gonna start this, I want an extra 3 minutes.
Well,
Now, my friend Senator Cottrell,
I'm
we're
not,
3 minutes over.
so, you hear what you're saying is the chairman wasn't a very good chairman, but not shut her up. But I've gone through this before, and I think I know how to handle it.
I think you're a star-spangled awesome chairman. I just want to say that for the record. But if you're gonna let somebody over there go 3 minutes over, I want my extra 3 minutes.
Well, let's see if it's abused by anybody else before we make that decision.
I'm just telling you, I'm gonna abuse it.
Well, I'm not gonna let you abuse it.
You're a good man, Mr. Chairman.
Before I go to Lee, I want to put a statement in the record from 56 former FBI agents wrote to this committee to support this nominee. Quote, never has the FBI faced.
The reality of the situation is the Democratic Party was caught weaponizing the judicial system and the FBI and the CIA. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35. This is something I take every day. Take a teaspoon, swish it in your mouth, gargle with it about 30 seconds or so, and then swallow. It'll help to boost up your immune system. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, a great way is to take a tablespoon or 2 a day. Do the same thing, swish it in your mouth, gargle, swallow. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 35 or the Max 14.
Senator, during that time on January 6th, I was serving as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. And days prior, we had received the authorization from the President to issue the National Guard to protect you and your colleagues. But as you know, the law requires requests before the deployment of that guard. That request did not come in until the afternoon of January 6th. Once that request came in, this unfortunately, as has been confirmed by his own testimony, I believe, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, failed to immediately deploy the National Guard and instead took a break to speak to media and make personal phone calls. That endangered the safety of you and your colleagues. And if you look at the Biden Inspector General report, we at the Department of Defense authorized the fastest cold start of the National Guard since World War II and the largest occupation since the American Civil War. And the Biden Justice Department said that we, including myself, as Chief of Staff, when it came to the deployment and employment of the National Guard, acted swiftly and without undue delay.
So that's what you were talking about. And that's why you had the reference to the UCMJ. Tell us what that means.
Uniform Code of Military Justice is for uniformed officers who betray the code of justice and also act inappropriately. And I thought any delay to have the National Guard arrive on scene here must be called out, whether it was a fellow Republican or not, especially someone under my auspices running the Department of Defense.
Okay, so moments ago, when Senator Durbin displayed a chart with that quote, there was a reference in part of it to the UCMJ. That's what it was referring to.
Yes, sir.
Those were the cowards in uniform. Those people who didn't do what they were supposed to do, and a lot of people were put in danger as a result.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's very good to know. I do find it significant that we've heard all kinds of aspersions cast in your direction by people who do not know you, by people who do not share your worldview, by people who do not share your commitment to the Constitution or your commitment to public service. I find it astounding that they're willing to say this amidst such great ignorance, and I find it equally heartening that the 56 former FBI officials who
Trump is going to be speaking on the plane crash thing here.
enforcement agency and not a weapon of political warfare. These are the people who stand by you. Those who cast aspersions don't share those views. Would I be correct in surmising that?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the Fourth Amendment for a moment. The Fourth Amendment tells us that in order for the government to breach your expectation of privacy relative to your person, your home, your papers, they want to search that. If they want to seize you, they've got to get a warrant. That warrant has to describe with particularity the persons or places to be searched were to be seized and to connect them up, showing a probable cause. Now, in the case of FISA 702, we're dealing with a somewhat different universe. And moments ago, we heard some discussion about FISA 702, about suddenly we've got a different FISA 702 than what we had when President Trump was last in office. Is that true? Because by my count, FISA 702 has not changed substantively since President Trump was in office last.
That's correct.
Okay. And there was also some back and forth discussion about FISA 702
I
and the
think
use
Trump
of
is
it,
speaking right
and the
now.
fact that in real time,
Breaking.
Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for a nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal. And I have to say, the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast. It was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly. And we are a country of really, we are in mourning. This is really shaken a lot of people, including people very sadly from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent of very talented people. Unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy, icy Potomac, was it cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. Because over the years I've watched as things like this happen, and they say, well, we're always investigating, and then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think we have some pretty good ideas, but we'll find out how this disaster occurred, and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy.
Let me just pause this for a second. If you notice what he said, the warm embrace of God. This is the trans migration of the souls that I was talking about earlier in this broadcast. I'm telling you, listen, pay attention, pay attention.
second day on the job when that happened. It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people. And they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA, Christopher Rocheleau, a 22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for.
Something has popped in my head. I have to pause him for a sec. Sorry, President. You take 64, which is the 60 plus the 4 crew members that were on American Airlines. You divide that by 2. What do you get? You get 32. 32 is a Kabbalistic number where you have the 10 Sephirah, the attributes of the tree of life, and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. I'm telling you, this is what just happened is very Kabbalistic.
Controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence. And we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our higher standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them. They can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target. And you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism, all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hire.
I'm just pausing for a second. He just took something very negative, and because he lives in the world of chaos, he became stronger and shot it back at the Democratic Party. In the failed policies of DEI, the failed policies of the Democratic Party with the 3 pillars that I've talked about. It's amazing. This guy's amazing.
Were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. You know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray, and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we also the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else that came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some reason, he had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, do you see, he was talking about, do you see him? But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also, he said, follow him in. And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in, that means like everything's fine, follow him in. You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter, because it was visual. It was a very clear night. It was cold, but clear, and clear as you could be. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary, thus far. I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where we had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quick. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. It did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you
What
had
is
vision of it all the
interesting
way,
is that,
perfect vision
what is
of it.
interesting is Trump is not mentioning, and maybe he doesn't know, but Trump is not mentioning what the reports by the local news was saying towards the residents that are in the area. Their observation in the morning and afternoon, where flights that were coming in were a little bit different. So that's seeming as though military operations changed a little bit. Now, maybe it's a combination of the changed military operation and incompetent air traffic control. Maybe it's a combination of the two. But I'm curious to understand why he didn't bring that up. Now, he may not know about that, but there's local news videos about residents saying that throughout the day, the flights were a little weird.
All the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a slight turn at the very end. And it was, by that time, it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height, because if it was at the same height, you could have gone under it or over it, and nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher, it could have been 200 feet lower, but it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going in an identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed. And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane, but you wouldn't have even been able to see that because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in. And so you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made, and you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives. We're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control. It's such an important position, and I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it. We had the highest standard that you could have, and then they changed it back. That was Biden, to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that. And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately, that was, we'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, you know, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, well, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the president's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We've had a whole of government response, local, state, federal, and when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible with the NTSB who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete, would you like to say something? Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened.
We're
I would echo as well.
currently listening to Secretary of Defense Pete Hesketh at a White House press briefing on the mid-air collision last night near Reagan International Airport.
And their families that were affected by this never should happen. And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers, young captain, staff sergeant, and the CW2 chief warrant officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on a regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating.
No, wait. Remember what I was saying? I paused him, so we're not going to lose anything. I'm going to play the whole thing. So remember what I said, 9/11, what was 9/11? There was terrorism, it involved the military, there was inside operations going on, there was a stand down, there's air traffic control issues, there's, testing, of training of the Air Force and all this stuff, right? So what Pete Hegseth said, Secretary of Defense, said that this was a continuity of government standard training thing. I'm sure they do standard training for continuity, but it's a data point. The point I'm making here is that continuity of government, 9/11, I keep on saying this event has information in it that for the ones that can get it, crack the nut of the information and understand what it is, will tell you something about a 9/11 like event that's coming. So some of the data points, we have air traffic controllers that are potentially undertrained or incompetent. You got continuity of government. Well, wait a minute here. If we have another 9/11 like event, don't you think that there's going to be a continuity of government, at least temporarily? So the things that they're saying, even when President Trump, stayed in the embrace of the warmth of God. Well, he's talking about souls and the trans migration of the souls. So something weird's going on. My spider sense was right. My spider sense is right. I had no idea what the military training was until what Pete Hegseth was talking about. But this event is a random event, but there's information in it through speeches, through numbers, through juxtaposition. It's telling us about a future calamity. It's like God saying, I'm hinting to you that something is going to happen. Stop it.
An Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top tier aviation assets inside the DoD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DoD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks, flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you. Thank you.
JD, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and Vice President, the Secretary of Transportation, and Ep93. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control. And we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
On DEI and the claims you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. It shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that. We're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior. And that's what we're going to have. Yeah, yeah, please, go ahead.
President, you mentioned that the public that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Ms. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the
Well, there's
Democratic
to be a
Republic
question
of
about
Congo.
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem, I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
And yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed. And you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the US military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane. You think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you. Please. Please.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for being here. Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who's at fault? If it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of DC?
Well, I've given you the analysis. And the analysis was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. Those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given a few seconds later, there was a crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. You have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower. We're higher. So if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines Center, he's along the track that every plane is along. You see, what was the helicopter doing in that track? Very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play. And they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger?
There were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented. I have not, no. Not about this.
You've already issued an executive order to say, well, restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more did you change? People say.
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes.
That is such a dumb ass question. You do an executive order 3 days. You really think that you're going to be able to totally wipe clean all of the stupid DEI that Biden put in place? Of course not. But what it is you got the press, who usually is liberal bias and hates Trump because they have orange man bad syndrome, trying to blame it on his executive order. God, bullshit.
Been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Thank you. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hires in the federal government? What plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistakes. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots
were the ones.
I'm sorry that I'm pausing so many times, but another thought that just popped in my head is that under the Biden administration and under the Secretary Buttigieg of the transportation, we've had a lot of problems with Boeing, right? Here's another data point that's hinting at something 9/11 like is starting to brew. There's something, something with planes, something with military, mass casualties. Something's brewing.
Under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controls, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about ice skaters in a moment, because the U.S. Ice Skating Committee was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA tax you read is real, but the implications of this policy is newer, that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website. No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety. What I read. It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order, bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay. Please.
Welcome back. Sorry. You mentioned that vision was probably the problem that was an issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may be using night vision equipment. Is there any?
I heard that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plan if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. A couple more.
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees from quickly? Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
For sure, we want fast confirmations, and the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay, and they've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed. But we're struggling to get them out faster. We want them out faster. It's a good question, actually. We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good.
When I apply to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training that was done in that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about?
You don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know. But the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please.
No,
go ahead.
you've been critical of the current regulations and you called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir,
Well, I made the reforms.
what is your message?
3 days ago, I made.
Yes, sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly.
The first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I do not hesitate to fly. This is something that it's been many years that something like this has happened. And the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen. Again, we are going to have the
But
highest.
you also, I mean, we don't hear any questions about this, but you have to also have it in the context of the drones. Now, I'm not saying that there was drones involved, but because of the drone usage and the lack of transparency by the government about what's going on with the drones, things like this could happen. But I don't believe that this particular event is a drone issue. But there's an awful lot of problems in the sky right now. There's an awful lot of problems with Boeing. There's an awful lot of problems with the traffic controllers now. Maybe you should just, stay at home, not fly.
Some of the people that you've already hired for that position, long before we knew about this, I mean, long before, from the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake. They like to do things and they like to take them too far, and this is sometimes what ends up happening. With that, I'm not blaming the controller. I'm saying there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter, the height of the plane being at the same level and going in opposite directions. It's not a positive. But no, we're already hiring people. No, flying is very safe. We have the safest flying anywhere in the world, and we'll keep it that way. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
For DNI, let's listen live on Bloomberg.
Our military.
Okay, so
because
all right,
I believe
so
that
I'm not sure if we're gonna go to Tulsi's or to Cash's hearing, but before I do that, please help support my work and your health and follow the protocol that I'm doing. I'll tell you how to stack different ways to meet certain needs that you have, but a great supplement to take to boost up your immune system that you should be doing every day is magnesium and zinc. And if you're not feeling too well during the cold season, take a double dose, take one in the morning, take one in the evening. Make sure that you drink it with filtered water. Take this magnesium and zinc every day, boost up your immune system. Vitamin C, and this has magnesium in it. This helps to boost up your immune system, and it'll help with your skin. So please go to my store, get the vitamin C and magnesium. If you're not feeling too well, during the cold season, take a double dose of vitamin C. Drink it with filtered water. Make sure you filter your water, very important. Omega-3. Omega-3 is a great way to lower your LDL and increase your HDL levels. That means that you're improving your total cholesterol. In addition, omega-3 brings down systemic inflammation, and omega-3 also helps to prevent your red blood cells from sticking. That means you're reducing the chance of clots. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Control your lipid profile by taking omega-3 every day. And detoxify your body. How? By taking zeolite. Take a couple drops underneath your tongue, just small drops, drink filtered water, do that once a day, every day. Some people prefer to do a detox once or twice a year. So what they do for those individuals, you take about 4 or 5 drops, small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water, do that daily until the bottle's done, and then do that once or twice a year. But maintenance year-round is the better solution. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get Zeolite, detoxify your body. This will get rid of heavy metals, toxins, chemicals, including forever chemicals. All right. Let's go to Gabbard. I mean, we haven't listened to that hearing at all.
And analytic capabilities. In a few sentences, can you describe how you make assessments and how you're going to sift through all this intelligence and make careful and thoughtful conclusions?
Yes, Senator, there are great professionals who work within the intelligence community. I will build a strong team around me as they present the intelligence reporting to provide to the president through the president's daily brief and to respond to issues and concerns that this body has. I will welcome dissenting voices to be able to make sure that this information intelligence is thoroughly vetted prior to presenting it, and make sure that the truth is reported, whether that truth is convenient or not.
Well, thank you, Ms. Colonel Gabbard. And I appreciate that. The president and others are going to rely on that. I want to discuss such an assessment made by the IC. For years, the U.S. analyzed evidence of numerous chemical weapons attacks in Syria. Eventually, we were able to assess that Bashar al-Assad was responsible for a number of these attacks that slaughtered his own civilians. Do you accept the conclusion broadly that Assad used chemical weapons against Syrians?
Yes, and I'm on the record for years of agreeing with that broad assessment.
Thank you. Among the attacks the U.S. assessed Assad was responsible for 2 that occurred in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun in Syria. As a member of Congress and as a presidential candidate, and as recently as this month, in your written responses to this committee, you have cast doubt on the assessment that Assad is culpable in these 2 attacks. Is that still your position?
Senator, I raised those questions given conflicting information and evidence that was presented at that time.
Well, thank you. So to help inform the public, the Trump administration released declassified intelligence in 2017 and again in 2018, showing how experts analyzed multiple types of evidence, satellite imagery, medical experts, witnesses, describing sources, and showing the reasoning used to determine Assad's culpability in using these chemical weapons, including in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun in these attacks. The ones that you question, I have 2 documents I want to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Admitted.
Thank you. Were you aware of the declassified assessments, the one I referenced?
Yes, I was.
And as a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, did you take time to review these?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And can you explain to me then why you doubted the intelligence community's conclusions in these 2 cases, Douma and Khan Sheikhoun, but not the others? And please be specific.
These 2 cases were being looked at as to be used as a pretext for major military movement, and my fear was a repeat of the deployment of another 500,000 soldiers like we saw in Iraq towards what was the Obama administration's goal, which was regime change in Syria.
So basically what she's saying is that the military-industrial complex and the agencies keep on pushing a war footing and create a narrative. So we spend more money and maintain a never-ending war.
That came from the UN's Office on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons Inspectors, as well as an MIT professor, Ted Postel.
I want to talk about him for a second. So did you look into his credentials, yes or no?
Yes.
And were you aware of his appearances on Russian Today, which is used by the Russians to disseminate government-approved messages?
No.
Were you aware Postel
relied on a chemistry student with a record of defending the Assad regime.
At that time, I was not. I have been made aware since.
Do you consider this person or these two individuals now, do you consider them a better source for the chemistry of sarin gas than the U.S. intelligence community?
I assess that at the time, the information, I don't know the second person you're referring to, but MIT professor Ted Postel and the inspectors of the OPCW provided some credible questions that deserved examination.
Okay, thank you. Did you attempt to weigh Postel's claims against the significant evidence and assessments already conducted by the IC?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. So here's my concern here, Colonel. When we began this, you described a thoughtful approach to analyzing intelligence and reaching conclusions. This is what we expect of our professionals. But we just kind of walked through how you came to question Assad's use of chemical weapons in these two cases with a different approach. And I don't reject seeking out differing viewpoints. We need to do that. But you started from a place of doubting the conclusions of the U.S. intelligence community, and then you sought out information that confirmed your viewpoint. That led you to embrace the opinion.
Didn't we learn anything with the whole weapons of mass destruction issue that we had with George Bush Jr.? I mean, come on.
Or discount the overwhelmingly information that contradicted your viewpoint, including the expert assessments of our own intelligence community. And they don't get it right 100% of the time. I get that. But what I have seen makes it clear that at the same time that you were skeptical of our intelligence community's assessments, you would not apply the same skepticism to information that came from sympathizers of Russia and Assad. And I think that's something that we should all be concerned about. Thank you. I'm sorry for going over.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. I want to recognize and welcome to the committee our newest member, Senator Budd, although we all regret Senator Rubio's departure. We're all pleased, as evidenced by the 99-0 vote, that he is now the Secretary of State, and also pleased that we have a great new member on our committee, Senator Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for your leadership here as well. Colonel Gabbard, great to see you again. I enjoyed meeting you in the office a while back, and I've enjoyed our friendship and our time serving together in the U.S. House. So as you know, Section 3023 of Title 50 states any individual nominated for appointment as DNI
Senator
shall
Ted
have.
Budd, North Carolina, questioning Tulsi Gabbard testimony in the
You
Senate.
served 4 terms as a member of the House of Representatives, which is a constitutional office. And throughout your tenure, you are a member of the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
You also served over 2 decades in the U.S. Army, including holding commands at multiple levels and served through administrations of both political parties. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
Throughout your time in the U.S. House and in the Army, you've been both a consumer of intelligence and policymaker. How important is it for the intelligence community to provide timely, relevant, factual, and objective
What a
intelligence to
softball
policymakers?
question. My God. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the dual purpose supplement that I have here, olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract will help boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. How? It brings down inflammation and helps you control your LDL levels. It'll help to bring them down and help to improve your HDL levels and bring them up. When you do that, you're improving your total cholesterol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the olive leaf extract, boost up your immune system and your cardiovascular health. Digestive enzyme complex, very important to reduce the load on your pancreas. There's enzymes in here that will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. It'll help you to absorb nutrients. If you work out, take digestive enzyme complex for your pre or post workout to help you break up those nutrients in the food that you eat to fuel your workout. And obviously when you're older, especially 40 plus, you want to reduce that load on the pancreas. So please pay attention, get the digestive enzyme complex, reduce the load on your pancreas, and help to absorb those nutrients and improve your metabolism. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And 2 other important supplements to take. One is Myotrol. Myotrol helps you to gain muscle and to maintain muscle mass. Do some resistance training. Take Myotrol every day. This is very important when you get older. People start to atrophy with their muscles. Myotrol will also help with your mitochondria. The health of the mitochondria will improve and you'll have more energy. And you need energy to help maintain and build muscle. So please take Myotrol. If you're an athlete, you can take Myotrol and it'll help you gain strength. This stacks really well with Gladiator Barley. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Lignans helps to boost up your immune system, helps with your endocrine system. It's also an antioxidant. It's part of the 4-pillar system. And that one of the pillars is taking turmerics, ashwagandhas, and lignans to bring down inflammation. Lignans is very important for your immune system. So please take it. This is a powder. There's a little scooper, and you mix it with soft foods, or you can mix it with filtered water or a smoothie or whatever, but take it every day. In addition, this is great by bringing down that inflammation. This can help also with individuals that are athletes. You can reduce that inflammatory, the inflammation of the workout, so you recover quicker. So not only does it help to boost up your immune system and help with your endocrine system, but this could be used to help with recovery during a workout. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. And lastly, C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. This is a very high quality, very potent antioxidant. You take a teaspoon a day, it'll soak up those free radicals, reduce the stress on a cell, help with the mitochondrial health. You'll have more energy because your mitochondria is healthier. So you'll have more ATP, and that means that your tissues, your cells, your organ systems are going to perform better. And you're going to slow down the aging process. So please take this every day, take a teaspoon a day. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, or MCT coconut oil. C60 is a molecule that has to be suspended in a lipid, an oil, for proper absorption. It absorbs the best when you're on an empty stomach. And if you work out, take the C60 before your workout, you know, soak up those free radicals that you're creating during your workout, and you will recover quicker. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, very important. It's one of the 4 pillars of this whole health protocol. Taking a strong antioxidant like C60 is very important for your health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60.
Colonel Gabbard, I was a member of the House of Representatives on 9/11/2001. As a matter of fact, I was at the Pentagon that very morning when the attacks happened. Where were you?
Now, isn't that very interesting? We were talking about the plane crash and how I kept on saying, there's information going on. Then just randomly we're listening to Tulsi Gabbard's testimony, and some senators talking about him being at the Pentagon during 9/11. I'm telling you, I don't want this ability, but it's kind of like quasi-psychic. I've had it all my life, but I mean, I'm telling you, I'm sensing 9/11 is coming. A 9/11-like event is coming.
Intelligence failure. This caught us all by surprise, even though the World Trade Center had been attacked earlier. Do you think stovepiping was a problem in our intelligence failure?
There's no question about it, Senator.
Oh, okay. Well, based on your reading, okay. Could you elaborate?
Yes, absolutely, Senator. When we look back at the post 9/11 reporting and the post assessments that were made, it was very clear that there was stovepiping of information and intelligence that occurred at many levels, at the highest, but also at the lowest levels, where information that was collected by the FBI, information that was collected by the CIA, was not being shared. It was almost ships passing in the night, where if there was an integration of those intelligence elements and information being shared, it is highly.
What about the white paper that Paul Wolfowitz was a part of? Talking about that we need another Pearl Harbor to get involved in the Middle East. That was before 9/11.
The Office of D&I to eliminate redundancy and increase effectiveness. Do you worry that in doing so, we might be getting back to the same problem that we had in 2001?
The problem that we had in 2001, Senator, remains at the forefront of my mind. And as you said, this is exactly why the ODNI was created. Given my limited vantage point not being in this seat,
I'm telling you, I've been saying this all broadcast. 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. Listen, listen, listen. The deep state doesn't want Trump to restructure it. It needs more funding and more power. The only way they're going to get it is if they have another fucking 9/11. So what they basically did is they're going to confirm her. And what's going to happen is that some sort of restructuring takes place and then it flies underneath the radar. And then all of a sudden, boom, the event happens. And it's in this hearing. Let me rewind this a little bit. Even though this is live, I can rewind it a little bit.
And I, given
able to listen in, but I understand there's been some discussion about reforming the Office of D&I to eliminate redundancy and increase effectiveness. Do you worry that in doing so, we might be getting back to the same problem that we had in 2001?
The deep state setting up Trump for a 9/11.
The problem that we had in 2001, Senator, remains at the forefront of my mind. And as you said, this is exactly why the ODNI was created. Given my limited vantage point not being in this seat, I'm concerned that there are still problems with stovepiping that need to be addressed. And in some cases, my concern would be that unnecessary bureaucratic layers may be contributing to that problem. This is where coming in and being able to really take a fresh look, given my experience and my background, will be essential to making sure that the ODNI is accomplishing the reason why it was created in the first place.
Okay, and I have a lot of suggestions about how to make the Department of Defense more efficient also. I would simply caution you before I move on to that other quick question. That as
now he's a Republican. Now he's going to probably help confirm her. But the thing is don't you think that he has a bat phone with the military-industrial complex? And when you're restructuring the Pentagon, guess what? There are going to be some losers in that military-industrial complex. So the bat phone starts ringing, and he answers it, and it's Lockheed Martin saying, you got to tell, Tulsi, to follow the line, or we're going to, do something. Trump wants, we need to truncate the national security state. 100%. They're out of control. I want to go to a pre 9/11 day. They're out of control. But they're going to kick and scream and allow for another 9/11 to happen and orchestrate it. Now you want to call that, some sort of, false flag, or if you want to call it an inside job, I don't fucking care what you call it. The bottom line is it's coming.
Trying to eliminate overlaps that we avoid getting back to the thing that created your agency to start with. Now, let me just ask about anomalous health incidents. I know you're not.
What?
I think we lost our feed from the Senate Intelligence Committee. We'll bring you back to that as soon as we get some restoration here in the conversation with Tulsi Gabbard. This is one of the most controversial, if not the most controversial, of Donald Trump's cabinet picks here that we've been listening to, regarding her former, at least, dalliances with Bashar
All right,
al-Assad.
while they're reestablishing the feed, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the resveratrol. I've been taking this for decades. It stacks really well with C60, NAD+, and ubiquinol. It's an antioxidant. It helps mitochondrial health. It'll help to get rid of cells that have gone into senescence. You want to slow down the aging process and get healthy, start taking resveratrol and stack it, like how I've been telling you. Ubiquinol is one of those stacks with resveratrol. Ubiquinol, this ubiquinol that I sell on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, is the highest bioavailable CoQ10 that you can buy. Let me repeat that. The highest bioavailable CoQ10 that you can buy. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. What does ubiquinol do? It soaks up free radicals. It helps to boost up energy levels. It helps with the mitochondrial health, and it helps to protect your neurons. Wonder why, when you get older, you need to take CoQ10? Well, guess what? Taking ubiquinol is the most active form of CoQ10 that you can absorb. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ubiquinol. You're going to need this, especially if you're 40 plus. You're going to need to protect your neurons. If you want to have gait issues, you want to have Parkinsonian issues, probably not. So take ubiquinol. Ashwagandha root brings down cortisol levels, also controls your blood glucose levels, really important for cardiovascular health, but also for your immune system. When you have high inflammation, especially from high cortisol levels, that's immunosuppressive. That means that if you have a stressed out life and you're producing lots of cortisol and you have problems with controlling your sugar levels, you're going to probably increase cardiovascular disease, and your immune system is being suppressed. You want to stop that. Take ashwagandha root, improve your cardiovascular health and your immune system. It stacks really well with turmeric. Turmeric is an antioxidant, and it brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. You take these things together, you're improving your cardiovascular health and your immune system. And this stacks really, really well with lignans. And it's one of the 4 pillars of health and supplementation that I've been talking about. The first pillar, neutralize pathogens. Second pillar, take strong antioxidants like C60. Lower inflammation on the third pillar with turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. And the fourth pillar, boost energy levels and your metabolism by taking the Boomer Boost powder.
I don't believe for a second President Trump would ask me to do something that would break the law.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you are asked about an illegal order, what will you do? You can say, oh, it'll never happen. What will you do if you're dealing with an illegal order?
My commitment has been and will be, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to comply with the law.
Are there, Senator Wyden, you've actually asked 2 questions already.
I'm not asking you.
You've asked 2 questions. I said there's 1 question now. Are there other senators who would like a follow-up question? Senator King.
I'd like to follow up on my line of questioning about Edward Snowden and understand how you analyzed the facts leading up to your 2020 bill, providing him with a pardon. There was the House committee report, which granted was redacted.
Senator Angus King, the independent from Maine caucus of the Democrats, his follow-up question with Tulsi Gabbard.
Material. I would have thought that would raise a question in your mind. Secondly, Edward Snowden, there are about 20 countries that don't have extradition treaties with the US. He chose to go to Russia, become a Russian citizen. Given that information, how did you decide to introduce a bill providing him with a pardon? Introducing a bill in the United States Congress is not the same as a tweet or a commentary on a podcast. I'm concerned about your apparent lack of interest in the scope of Edward Snowden's traitorous activities.
Senator, I've answered this some version of this question many times in this hearing already. My foremost concern has been, remains, and will continue to be in upholding my oath to the Constitution to support and defend Americans' Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I'm committed to ensuring that we protect our nation's secrets by implementing a number of actions I've outlined so that those who have concerns about programs within our intelligence community, that we don't have another Snowden-like leak, and they are able to raise those concerns either directly with Congress or through any one of a number of legal paths that are available. And I think it's also important and in line with
What's
many
really
of the
important,
concerns
what's really important is that the intelligence agencies and the national security state should never have that much power to be able to circumvent the Fourth Amendment.
capabilities.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Chairman, and letting us have a second question. Thank you again for hanging in there with this discussion, Colonel Gabbard.
Democratic Senator Michael Bennett of
The House
Colorado.
Intelligence Committee review of the Snowden disclosures found not only that he was a traitor, but that since Snowden's arrival in Moscow, he has had and continues.
So if you shine a light on the deep state and how they're taking away your civil liberties, you're a traitor. Amazing how that works. What about this overreach since, 9/11, this overreach of the national security state? This is, when I say that the national security state needs to be totally restructured, there's a reason for it. I'm telling you, they have used 9/11 and they've continued on the path. They created 9/11. They fucked up the Middle East and they still want power.
Hope that the concerns that this committee has, that we need somebody here who will actually honor their oath, as you said. Maybe I should make it easy for you. Edward Snowden did not honor his oath to the Constitution, which is what
No,
you just said was the most.
I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that. He did. It was the national security state that was out of control with their hyper surveillance program that Congress should have been pushing back on the national security state and the NSA. Why? Why didn't Congress hold these agencies more accountable instead of letting the heads of these agencies lie to them during their hearings? No, the national security state is out of control. So who's really the traitor? Who's really the domestic enemy? It's the ones in the national security apparatus.
Role. Why is he being treated like a folk hero by you instead of the traitor that he was?
Senator, as I said, my focus and what should be of relevance to all of you and everyone watching is what I will do as Director of National Intelligence to work with you to make sure there's not another Snowden-like leak, given the paramount importance of our national security and keeping our nation's secrets. I've laid out a number of ways that I intend to do that, if confirmed, in fulfilling my responsibility in this role.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's really
I just wanted to
easy. It's really easy. If they don't restructure the national security state under the Trump administration, we will always have tyranny by the national security state. Always. This is our best chance in our lifetime to make sure that we push back the powers of the national security state to a pre-9/11 day. They caused 9/11. They asked for more power. They got it. They get tons of funding, and they continue to erode the constitutional freedoms because they want to maintain their emergency power. It's time to destroy the national security state and rebuild it where it's effective and it holds constitutional rights of the citizens. Instead of just running around saying, this is an emergency, we can do whatever we want. I mean, if we get caught, you know, red-handed, then we'll lie to Congress and we'll blame another, you know, agency head or a different administration, and we'll, you know, beg for forgiveness. But we're patriotic. And the national security state's so patriotic that they'll erode your constitutional freedoms for a bullshit emergency.
Along with regard to China, because it's such an important part of your portfolio.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York with a follow-up for Tulsi Gabbard.
Over the last 15 years about their architecture and how they're building up space capabilities, sea capabilities, Air Force capabilities, every type of capability they possibly could. And that aligned with their malign foreign influence and with their ambition with regard to Taiwan. It just creates a very dangerous scenario and concerning one. And so I wanted to ask you about Japan, because recently, about a year and a half ago, 13 months ago, you said that you didn't think it was wise to allow Japan to build up their own defense architecture. And you thought it was short-sighted. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because our alliance with Japan is so important in our ability to defend against malign activities of China, not only geographically, but because for the last 50 years, they've been close allies that we rely on. We share intelligence, we share operations, they are a great ally. So what was your concern about? And have you had any views that have shifted in that regard?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I agree. Japan has been a strong ally of the United States in a different capacity as a member of the Hawaii National Guard. I've gone and conducted training missions in Japan with the Japanese Self-Defense Force. Their forces and their constitution has been primarily focused on self-defense. The concerns that I had raised previously had to do with really looking at the bigger picture of the context of the history with Japan and China, and recognizing the implications of how this kind of shift from a self-defense posture that Japan has had constitutionally to a more offensive posture could result in escalation. And given the history, we need to acknowledge what the ramifications could be to our own security interests. And that's something that I am looking forward to being able to provide to all of you and to the President, confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, is that in-depth analysis and assessment so that various policies or actions that you all or the President are considering are fully thought through, given that broader context of nuance of history and the complexities that exist within the Asia-Pacific region. Having grown up there, I'm very familiar with.
But you
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Gabbard, when Russia was denying Assad's use of chemical
Senator
weapons,
Mark Kelly, Democrat from
they
Arizona.
accused the U.S. of supporting terrorists. This is a line that Putin used frequently during the Syrian civil war as he supported Assad. Syrian officials made similar comments. They did it repeatedly. They did it in public. They did it at the United Nations. In 2016, you gave an interview in which you said, and this is a quote, "The U.S. is providing direct and indirect support to terrorist groups in order to overthrow the Syrian government." And in 2019, on the Democratic presidential debate stage, you said of President Trump, this is a quote, "This current president is continuing to betray us. We were supposed to be going after al-Qaeda, but over years now, not only have we not gone after al-Qaeda, our president is supporting al-Qaeda." So I'm interested to hear, what was your goal in saying these things? And did you consider, before saying them, the motives of Iran and Russia, what their motives might have been before making these claims?
Senator, as someone who enlisted in the military specifically because of al-Qaeda's terrorist attack on 9/11 and committing myself and my life to doing what I could to defeat these terrorists, It was shocking and a betrayal to me and every person who was killed on 9/11, their families and my brothers and sisters in uniform. When as a member of Congress, I learned about President Obama's dual programs that he had begun really to overthrow the regime of Syria, and being willing to, through the CIA's Timber Sycamore program that has now been made public, of working with and arming and equipping Al-Qaeda in an effort to overthrow that regime, starting yet another regime change war in the Middle East. DoD train and equip program, again, begun under President Obama, is widely been known, looked at, and studied, that ultimately resulted in over $500 million being used to train who they called moderate rebels, but were actually fighters working with and aligned with Al-Qaeda's affiliate on the ground in Syria, all to move forward with their regime change and not acknowledging what was obvious at the time and what has unfortunately borne true, which was that a regime change war in Syria, much like the regime change wars in Iraq, the toppling of Gaddafi and Mubarak, while these are all dictators, would likely result in the rise of Islamist extremists like Al-Qaeda taking power. I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It should
is
be.
certainly
And I
not in our
understand,
interests.
I appreciate your answer and thank you. My concern has to do with the tendency to repeat Russian and Syrian, and even in some cases, I think we'll get into in the closed session, Iranian information, and to discount what comes from our intelligence community.
Senator, every American deserves to know that people in our own government were providing support to our sworn enemy, Al-Qaeda. That should not be acceptable by anyone.
Thank you, Senator Keller, Ms. Gabbard. In conclusion, Senator Warner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, one of the things I love about this committee, and I know folks who are here from Ms. Gabbard may not, but this has always been a bipartisan committee. And, you know, my friend Richard Burr, who said we always kind of follow.
It's live sound from the Senate Intelligence Committee right now, as some senators get a second or follow-up question and an extended Q&A here with Tulsi Gabbard, President Trump's pick for DNI, remembering that she cannot lose a single Republican vote on this committee, the Intelligence Committee. You have only a majority, a spread of one here, assuming that all Democrats vote against her. Dan Flatley, writing on our Top Live blog, following along here on the terminal, which is very helpful. We've got three confirmation hearings happening at once here with Kash Patel, RFK Jr. as well. Dan writes she's done well in some respects in shoring up support for her nomination, addressing questions about her visits to Syria and Lebanon, and her changing position on Section 702 surveillance. It's FISA he's referring to here, but her repeated refusal to call Edward Snowden a traitor has her skating on thin ice. As we noticed a little while ago, Senator Tom Young, said to be a swing vote Republican, not happy that she refused.
Heaven forbid you have a whistleblower, because the system sucks, you know? And let's try to demonize, you know, the whistleblowers. You know, you got to remember the context that Snowden was in. You know, that was that whole post 9/11 context. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin K2. This helps with increasing bone density. It'll also help with your cardiovascular health. A great stack with vitamin K2, MK7, is the stacker with D3. D3 helps to absorb calcium. It's a gene expression cofactor. It helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis, especially if they're infected. And when you stack these together, not only are you helping with your bone density, especially when you do resistance training and you take in calcium either through a supplement or through milk. I drink milk for my calcium intake. Do resistance training, and what will happen over time is your bone density will improve. But not just that, taking K2 with D3 will help with your cardiovascular health. All right. I have a box. It's called the Longevity Cardiovascular Health Box, something like that. And on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and I have a whole plethora of different supplements that you take to be able to slow down plaque formation, prevent the plaque formation continuing, and that over time will happen with proper diet, exercise, and the supplementation within the Longevity Cardiovascular Box. Your plaque buildup will actually start to shrink over time. But you got to do some exercise. You got to, you know, take the supplements and also proper diet. But when you do that over time, you're going to actually see plaque shrinking. All right. Now you can't get rid of all the plaque that's built up in your vascular system. But if, let's say, you did a ultrasound on the carotid, all right, or an ultrasound on the descending aorta, and there's buildup of plaque, right, especially when you get older, you can measure the percentage of blockage. And if you baseline before taking the protocol, and let's say you're at 50% blockage or 60% blockage of your carotid or aortic, descending aorta, right? A year or two later, after taking these supplements, all right, you can shrink that actual blockage to maybe 20% or maybe 15%. Going from 50 to 15 is huge flow difference, huge flow difference. But it's with proper diet and exercise, right? So the things that stack really well with K2 D3 for cardiovascular health is C60, because that soaks up the free radicals. Plaque is a oxidized LDL. Taking omega-3 and nattokinase and supplements that bring down the LDL levels and increase your HDL levels, you're reducing LDL that will be oxidized. So you're soaking up the free radicals with the C60. You're bringing down the LDL levels with the nattokinase and the omega-3s. You're bringing down inflammation with the lignans, the turmeric, and the ashwagandha. You're reducing the chances of not just plaque buildup, but calcium depositing around the plaque or inside the plaque by taking the K2 and the D3 together with some exercising, not overdoing it, but some exercising and proper diet. Over time, what will happen is that you're starting to slowly shrink that plaque. And you're not forming new plaques, or you're radically reducing the new plaque formation, because you've reduced the inflammation, you reduce the LDL, you reduce the free radicals, you reduce the chances of calcium depositing. And that is a great way to get healthy. But it takes time. It's about stacking. So please take my advice, get the K2, get the D3, help with your bone health and your cardiovascular health. If you really want to supercharge this protocol, get the Longevity Cardiovascular Box on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Nattokinase stacks well with D3 and K2. You can take it separately. This helps to bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels. This stacks also well with omega-3. And nattokinase helps to reduce clotting, which is also very important for your cardiovascular health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and add nattokinase to your protocol. So I just told you how to mitigate and reverse cardiovascular disease. One of two biggest diseases that we have in the United States. The other is diabetes. Well, lose some weight, exercise, eat properly, and take ashwagandha and Boomer Boost and Gladiator barley, and you're going to be controlling your A1C levels radically. So So I just gave you a solution to most of the diabetes that we have in the United States. Not all diabetes is because of lifestyle, but most of it is. Please go to my store and get the NAC. NAC helps to boost up glutathione levels. Glutathione is really important as an antioxidant to soak up free radicals in a different way than C60. So NAC is stackable. It's synergistic with C60 because they're soaking up free radicals in a different pathway. Now you can detoxify your liver and your kidney with NAC, and you can get your system into parasympathetic. You're calming down your nervous system. So please go to my store and get the NAC. Hyperactive central nervous system. If you're in sympathetic, chronically in sympathetic fight or flight, you're going to have high cortisol levels. And when you have high cortisol levels, you get more inflammation. You get this inflammatory response, and what happens is it becomes immunosuppressive because of the high cortisol levels. Your blood glucose levels skyrocket, and lots of problems. You don't want to be in chronic sympathetic. You want to be in parasympathetic. And when you're in parasympathetic, your blood, your heart rate will go down, the inflammation will go down, your immune system will get better. Also go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get NAD+. NAD+ is something that I've added to my stack. Why? It boosts up energy levels. It helps to repair DNA damage. Believe me, when you get older, you have DNA damage in your mitochondria and in your cells, in your nucleus, the cell nucleus. So it repairs the DNA damage. And NAD+ will help to protect your neurons. Now, this stacks really well with ubiquinol. This stacks well with resveratrol and C60. So please go to my store, get the NAD+, boost up your energy levels, help repair your DNA damage, and protect your neurons. When we get older, we are underappreciating the importance of protecting our neurons. There are going to be a lot of people that are moving into their geriatric years, and they are going to have neurological problems. They're going to have memory problems. They're going to have movement problems. And these are things that can be mitigated if you're younger and you decide to take supplementation and a holistic approach by proper diet, exercise, proper sleep, mental, acuity exercises, learning things, reading and writing, mindfulness or spirituality or meditation, exercising with some resistance training, some cardiovascular training, stretching, balancing is really important. You get better blood flow, you're activating the neurons, and you're taking supplementation that is keeping the neurons healthy. So you're mitigating all these damn problems like Lewy body and Parkinson's and dementia of all types. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get healthy. It's a holistic approach, and it is in your grasp. But you got to have a will. If there's no will, nothing's going to happen for you.
When it comes to doing that, and partly because he doesn't want it to land on his desk, right? I mean, we had an entire administration, in his first term where he wasn't prepared to take responsibility for acts of his cabinet, and that's just who he is, right? That's the guy we elected president of the United States, and so it shouldn't be a surprise that this is his MO. But I would say that the flashing red signal politically on this is he is the least popular president at the start of a term since 1953. That's not an attribute that is easy to overcome.
Let's
So if he
demonize
is
Trump
thinking
now on
about
Bloomberg.
wanting to sustain his power in office as a lame duck on election day, you would think that he would think through opportunities like this to unify the nation and to focus their attention on things that can actually.
Rick Davis is totally fucking wrong on Bloomberg like 90% of the time. He is in a position to reset the government and make America more efficient, more prosperous. And oh, by the way, as an added bonus, maintain our constitutional freedoms. Instead of saying, well, he's a lame duck president, he might as well just, you know, go off into the night, you know, and, you know, or into the sunset. I'll tell you, I can't stand Rick Davis and this clown that they interview constantly.
The FAA, Chris Rushlow, joining hands here with Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, has been on the job for something like 48 hours. I mean, this is really tough stuff, Jeannie, but when you consider the human element, I appreciate Rick taking time to consider the families who are gathered waiting for horrible news right now. Donald Trump, we had to bleep this. He used a swear to describe Pete Buttigieg, essentially saying that he thought the workforce was too white. Pete Hegseth says the era of DEI is gone. J.D. Vance, echoing.
You're literally having Bloomberg. You're literally having Bloomberg, which are a bunch of globalists, and pushing a globalist agenda and a trans capitalist agenda. All right? They're literally trying to make you think that DEI and incompetence is justifiable.
So shocking in one sense and not so shocking if you've been following Donald Trump in the other, that a few miles down the road from where they are pulling bodies still out of the Potomac River, these first responders who have been doing yeoman's work down there.
So let's just use the emotional fallacy and pretend that there isn't a problem with the FAA and incompetence. Let's pretend and use the emotional fallacy. No, this is the moment where you actually shine a light on the fucking problem. You know, it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing with these people.
Blame starts with him, and he wanted to blame everybody else. And that's what we're in for. And when Peter Alexander of NBC asked him the question about why this had been on why this has been the policy since he was president, he balked at that. But let me give you one more to Jeff's long list. Sean Duffy, in for 48 hours, maybe 24. The first thing he did as Department of Transportation Secretary had nothing to do with safety. Look up his first press release. It is rescinding woke DEA policies that advance Donald Trump's economic agenda. If there is truly a problem with hiring practices that are impacting safety, then why isn't the transportation secretary talking about that first and foremost? But they're not. And so this is part and parcel of what we signed up for, and certainly what we're getting at this point.
Boy, the lines that we heard from everyone in the briefing room say it all. Rick, Donald Trump said, I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. Will this actually change policy in Washington?
Yeah, not totally clear what that means, because policy in regard to air travel is about safety. And so I think, you know, you'd have to drill down on that a little bit more to understand what
Rick Davis is a freaking clown. And he's from Stone Court Capital LP. Do you really want to have someone that much of a clown run your finances? It's like asking Bozo the Clown to run your portfolio.
One roach, there are 1,000. Is this the one roach? And so I would think a really great endeavor is to not think about how we got here, but to think about the future and focus on a really significant effort on the part of the Department of Transportation.
That makes zero sense, because then you don't want to understand how you got where you are. Don't you want to find out what you did right and what you did wrong? Find out where the weaknesses are and the strengths and improve upon it? Oh, it's called SWOT analysis in MBA school. Rick Davis. Fuck.
Join us in the former Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, will be with us. Stay here on Bloomberg.
All right. Let's go to let's go to live now here.
Passengers and 4 crew members were on board the jet. We have learned that 3 soldiers were on the helicopter, which was on a training mission from Fort Belvoir in Virginia.
Hundreds of first responders joining what is now a recovery effort at this hour. As we have learned, there are no survivors. We have team coverage all across the district in Northern Virginia working to get that latest information about this crash.
Let's get right to Lily Zhang, who is in Gravelly Park, learning more about the investigation into the crash. Lily, what are you seeing at this hour?
Yeah, hey, good afternoon to you both. So we are at Gravelly Point here. This is a few hundred yards away or so from the runways at Reagan National. You can take a look behind us. Plenty of activity happening behind us here. I can tell you on this scene, it appears there are federal, local, state partners throughout this. We do know that the investigation includes the FAA, NTSB, as well as the U.S. Army. In a joint statement released about an hour or so ago, they mentioned that they are committed to transparency as part of this investigation, and we hope to hear more about how this all works, how the recovery efforts and operations will go in the coming hours or so. We also heard from the D.C. Fire Chief a little earlier this morning. He says that while, right now all this is still ongoing, he says that he's very confident that the remains of those who have died in this horrific crash will be recovered. But of course, as you can imagine, this is going to take some time. Just that image alone is an example of the small glimpse, again, of the massive efforts underway here, and also speaking with some people all throughout this afternoon. This is typically a spot where people like to come and watch planes take off and land. Typically a spot that's really scenic and enjoyable, but I will tell you that the mood out here today is incredibly different. It is really hard to absorb this information and this tragic situation. Really hard to grasp, according to some people that we've spoken with. We spent a lot of time out here. So as we learn more about this investigation and what these recovery efforts look like, we will keep you all posted. We'll send it back to you for now.
Thank you. We'll continue to check in, of course, with our reporters across the region here, assessing what we've seen since first dawn at this hour, which is really what many people were waiting for. As we knew, we got information that there would be no recovered, no survivors, and this would now search and rescue would turn into a search and recovery effort. But we are learning that.
Remember when I said at the very beginning of the year that 2025 is going to be 10 years all wrapped up in one? Seems to be playing out.
Carolina, and here our reporter down at Fox Atlanta writing, the father of the pilot on board the American Airlines plane identifies him as 28-year-old Sam Lilly. His father, who's also a pilot, says he was engaged to be married, started his training in 2019, was the first officer on that flight that left from Wichita. And of course, we're waiting to learn more. His family down in the Savannah, Georgia area right now, and we're waiting to connect with the Lilly family. But of course, as you can imagine, so many people starting to get notification that their family members may have been involved in either in that plane that was carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew, or of course aboard that Black Hawk from the Army that had left Fort Belvoir with 3 soldiers.
Yeah, you can imagine, and being the father of this pilot who had to announce this news, this horrific news. Sadly, the first officer on that flight, we're going to be getting more identifications of the other 2 soldiers on board that U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter, as well as the 64 people on board that flight, American Airlines flight. It is so tragic.
All
as
right,
we are
so I'm going to go
watching
back
all
to
of this
Bloomberg.
unfold.
I'm going to go back to Bloomberg so I can increase my blood pressure.
Tragic day here in the nation's capital. Kaylee, we are still waiting for real details on this deadly mid-air collision that happened at National Airport. We do know the rescue operation has become a recovery operation.
Yeah, so far they have recovered 28 bodies from the Potomac River, but it's 67 souls that are believed to have been lost in this crash between the commercial aircraft and the helicopter. We do
See that? 67 souls. This is the 3rd time that we've heard this. Bloomberg, Trump said this, and also I believe it was Hegseth. I mean, it's all about the sense that I get with this event is that it's like a soul, what is called a soul transmigration. Now, that's a Kabbalistic concept, you know, and a lot of people don't understand it. I only understand a little bit of it, but just something weird is happening with that event.
Enough time on DEI policy that appears to be where he was going.
And the president began all of this after sharing that he was mourning the loss of these lives and that the country was in mourning. Did say verbatim, we don't know what led to this crash, but we have strong opinions and ideas. So we're going to try throughout the next hour to help delineate opinion and idea from the facts of the matter that we do actually have. We'll have the latest from DCA in just a moment with Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall, but first we begin with a check on the markets and go to Charlie Pellet in New York.
Thank you very much, Daily Lines. Right now, we have got the S&P and the Dow both advancing. NASDAQ in the red, stocks rising on signs that the U.S. economy is doing just fine. So here's where we stand. S&P right now up 15. That is a gain of about 0.3%. Dow Industrials up 131, higher now by 0.3%. While NASDAQ trading lower, we've got the NASDAQ Composite Index down 26 now, a decline of 0.1%. The 10-year at 4.52%, with the 2-year 4.20%. Spot gold up $36 the ounce, trading at a record $27.96 right now, up 1.3%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.1%, $72.70 for a barrel of WTI. And Bitcoin now back above 105,000, 105,212 right now on Bitcoin, up by about 1.4%. After the bell, we've got Apple expected to post record results when it delivers quarterly earnings. Ahead of that report, Apple shares down now by 0.3%. Also reporting after the close of trading, the chipmaker Intel, which is trying to win back its dominance of the processor industry. Again, recapping here, U.S. stocks are advancing with the S&P up 13 now, up by 0.2%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. And Balance of Power continues right now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, here's Joe Matthew and Kelly Lyons.
All right, Charlie Pellet in New York, thank you so much. Here in Washington, in the district, and across the country, of course, we've been shaken in the last 24 hours by the mid-air collision near DCA, Reagan National Airport last night. A commercial aircraft operated by American Airlines with 64 individuals on board, between the passengers and the crew, and the 3 military members who were flying a Black Hawk helicopter, colliding in midair just near the runways. The commercial aircraft made its final approach to the airport. We heard from the President of the United States earlier about this matter. He described it as an hour of anguish for our nation and a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital. But he went on to share his thoughts on what exactly happened and where this goes next.
We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas. We'll find out how this disaster occurred, and will ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation of
the American Eagle Flight 5342 was on its way to Washington from Wichita, Kansas. The Black Hawk helicopter was on a training exercise, as we understand, at Fort Belvoir, not far away in Virginia. We're going to have a conversation coming up with a true expert on this as we wait to hear from investigators. Ray LaHood, the former U.S. Transportation Secretary, is going to be here in just a moment after we get an update from the airport itself. Let's go to National Airport with Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall. Tyler, this response, according to DC Fire and EMS Chief John Donnelly, included some 300 people. What are they up to now?
Yeah, hey Joe. There are still hundreds of first responders here on the ground at DCA as they continue this search mission. We've been told by officials that that search area has actually widened as they try to find the bodies of victims. By last count, 28 bodies have been pulled out of the Potomac River. We know that 64 people were on that American Airlines flight when it crashed into that Black Hawk helicopter, which was carrying 3 people at the time of the collision. Still many questions remain. New this hour, we found out that the NTSB will be briefing at 2:45 p.m. Eastern for us reporters here on the ground. And there will be questions, considering that the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, has said that this tragedy could have been preventable. Officials are trying to remain calm and project to the American public that the skies are safe to fly in. Here at DCA, the airport did reopen at 11 a.m. Eastern. We saw many people coming in with their roller bags to go into the airport. I spoke to one person who said they didn't know if they were going to show up this morning, considering the devastating news when I was inside the terminal. Saw that at least 58 departing flights today have been canceled. The airport says to expect further delays, but that they are trying to get their operations back up and running.
And of course, we heard from President Trump and other authorities throughout the day, Tyler, that people should not be afraid to fly. And this has been described as something that was preventable, but to this point, to our knowledge, does seem to have just been a tragic accident. But given that
the probability of it happening to you is extremely small. The bigger problem is that there are people that are put in positions that are incompetent, that could harm your life. So just be prepared. You know, update your, I guess, your insurance plan. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the best toothpaste that you can buy. This has no fluoride, has structural nanosilver. It will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, maintain a good gum line, reduce the inflammation at the gum line, and with good oral hygiene, you are reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease and you're reducing your chances of valvular disease. This is the best toothpaste that you can buy. There's nowhere else that you can buy a better toothpaste. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household. It has the structural nanosilver. It works very well. This is something that I use. Get healthy. Use a great, high-quality toothpaste. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Boomer Boost. All right? Boomer Boost is that fourth pillar that I've added to the core concept, right? There's 4 pillars. Neutralize pathogens, soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, and boost up energy levels. This will help to boost up the energy levels. It'll help with cardiovascular health. It will help with brain health. It will speed up your metabolism. It'll help with strength in your muscles. It has 68 different nutrients. It has a huge profile here that you can read on my store, the label. All right, we don't have time to go through the whole thing. There's a big scooper. You take 1 scoop a day. You take it in the morning or in let's say the lunchtime. Mix it with soft foods. You'll lose weight. You'll have lots of energy. And you can save money this way. All right. I'm sure that your breakfast costs more than 1 scoop of Boomer Boost. All right. So mix it with, how I take it is I mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt. Some people mix it with milk. Some people mix it in a smoothie that they create, or they mix it with filtered water. But take it once a day. Best way to do it is for breakfast or for lunch. You can also use this as a fuel, right? Your nutrients for your workout, right? For people that are really into working out, you know, let's say an athlete, all right, or a marathon runner or a weightlifter. This is great to fuel your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost. You can take it separately, or you can take it in a pair with barley. All right, I have 2 different types of barley. You can get the Gladiator barley, where it's really focused on gaining strength. It brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. All right, and it'll also help to detoxify. And the heirloom barley is more focused on the detoxification, reducing the inflammation, and soaking up the free radicals. If you really want to gain strength, taking the Gladiator barley is the way to go. This is a protein. It's a high-density protein, and the quality of this barley is way better than any barley you're going to get at Whole Foods. All right, you take just a few, maybe 2, 3, 4 small scoops a day, and you mix it with soft foods or with filtered water. The best way to do it is to take it with the Boomer Boost. If you take the Gladiator barley with the Boomer Boost, you really control your A1C levels. It's a great way to lose weight and to control your diabetes. this is very powerful stuff. All right. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost, get the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley and the Boomer Boost. I've created a box called the Longevity Boost box. That's discounted. You get the Boomer Boost and your choice of Gladiator barley or heirloom barley at a discount. You can use discount 5 on top of that. So I've made this very easy for you to get healthy. And I've created lots of different price points with lots of different stacks. You can buy stuff separately on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, to get healthy. Again, the 4 pillars: neutralize pathogens with structural nanosilver, bring down reactive oxygen species, free radicals with C60 and strong antioxidants, bring down inflammation by taking ashwagandha, turmeric, and lignans, and boost up your energy levels by taking Boomer Boost. You do that, and that is huge in terms of really boosting your health. You're slowing down the aging process, and you're boosting your immune system and helping your endocrine system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, so this broadcast has been going on for over 4 hours. Let me do a market cap. Let me do a market update here. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,058. Oh, 59 now. 6,059 for the S&P 500. VIX index is trading at 15.49, so the risk is low. Euro USD is trading at 1.04. Oil's trading at $72.89 a barrel. Bitcoin ETF long, BITO, is trading at 25.55. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 154.39. For everyone that has been participating, I greatly appreciate it. Just remember, I stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Links are in the description of all my videos. It's easy to get to the website. You can watch the live streams on Rumble and on YouTube. YouTube has the dashboard of the market. If you want to watch it that way, you can listen on X Spaces. You can ask questions on X Spaces. This show is designed for people to interact, ask questions, give me your opinion. So just keep that in mind going forward. I will be republishing these videos on the different channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Make sure that you subscribe to all those channels so you get the information that you need. All right. Thank you for listening. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support my work by going to my store and getting the products that I offer. Follow my protocol. It works. It's obvious it works. I use it. All right. So please go to my store, get the products, get healthy. I've done everything that I can to explain to you on how to stack to be able to get healthy. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.